Welsh today, so this meeting will be conducted in English only. Please can members refrain from using the chat function and instead use the raised hand icon to indicate when you want to speak. Please remember to keep your microphone muted when you are not talking. We all aware of that. If we now move on to the agenda item 1 is a welcome and apologies. Chris, do we have any apologies?
Yes, we do, Chair. We've had apologies from Councillor Gaynor-James.
Right, thank you. Right. If we move on to item 2, declarations of interest. Kath, could you please ask members in alphabetical order to state whether they have any interest to declare?
I will, Chair. I'll ask in the order that you're on my screen. So Councillor Evans first.
No, not that I'm aware of, no.
Councillor Clarkson.
Anything that might pertain to Pontypool Community Council, and I'm also the chair of Friends of the British, who are a litter picking group.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Parish.
Nothing I'm aware of, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ashley.
Well, I'm obviously a member of Cumbraon Community Council, so if anything comes up on that, I will do.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hawler.
None that I'm aware of.
Okay. Oh, everybody's moved around. I've just lost Councillor Haynes. Oh, there she's gone. Councillor Haynes, you just moved on the screen and completely blew my mind.
From my
Moved again.
That's from you there,
I've got a personal interest. I had a conversation with the monitoring officer yesterday because there is a section in the report that specifically refers to food outlets, and I own a cafe. But she has said that it is only a personal interest, not prejudicial.
Thank you. And finally, Councillor O'Connell.
Nothing to declare.
Thank you very much.
Right, that's great. Thanks, everybody.
Sorry, Kath, did you miss me?
Oh, you missed me.
Nothing to declare at the moment. But
you and Councillor Haynes moved on the screen for some reason. Sorry, Councillor Thomas.
Nothing to declare at the moment, thanks.
Thanks for that, Colette. We then move on to item 3, the minutes of the last meeting. It's between page 3 and page 20. Does anybody want to raise anything from them? Can somebody forward them and second for it, please? Councillor Ashley?
Yeah, I'll second it.
I'll forward it.
I'll second it.
Thank you very much. That's great. We now move on to agenda item 4. On the action sheet, is there anything you want to talk about regarding the action sheet? That's on 21-22.
Did we get anything back on flats?
Kath, did you want to come in?
Councillor Ashley, I sent that out last week to you.
Yeah, no, I probably didn't see it. That's why I'm asking. Sorry about that.
That's probably why you raised the question. It's worth asking anyway, Stuart. Thank you.
Yeah, so, is there any further discussion other than what you sent back?
Right. Okay, then if we move on to
item... I haven't received any comments, Councillor Ashley.
I'll go back and have a look and come back to you, all right? Sorry about that.
That's okay, that's great. If you then move on to agenda item 5, delivering the council's litter fly tipping strategy. If I can introduce the officers this morning, it is Simon Anthony, Head of Recycling and Environment, Dan Morelli, Head of Public Protection, Mark Pania, Senior Countryside Access Officer, and Sian Watkins, Street Scene Operations Coordinator.
Chair, we also seem to have Steve Bulpitt in the meeting as well.
Yeah, I'm just going to say
Dan is in here for some reason.
Yeah, no, that's great. Would anybody like to start and lead on introducing some of the report?
If I may, Chair, I've collected some thoughts and happy to introduce the report. Thank you.
That's great. If you'd like to lead on it, that'd be great.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, colleagues. Good morning, members. So, as you will have seen, this is a progress update for the litter and fly tip-in, for Torpoint litter and fly tip-in strategy. The report itself gives an update in terms of progress towards the deliverables, the action plan that sits within the strategy. So the strategy itself sets out the council's aims and objectives over a 5-year period to tackle litter, fly tipping and other nuisance items like dog fouling and smashed glass. It should be noted at this point that fly tipping, particularly the causes of fly tipping, come from a myriad of sources, and it really does take a multi-agency approach. It really isn't for Torfaen to solve the conundrum of fly tipping, and it is right that the strategy looks to pull in both private and public sector bodies to tackle the challenge of fly tipping. There are 9 objectives within the strategy, and as I mentioned, there are a number of actions that sit below that. This report feeds back the delivery of those actions over the last 2 years. Members will have reviewed the background graphs in the earlier sections of the report, which shows sort of fly tipping, where the fly tipping occurs, what materials are most likely to be fly tipped, and those sort of things. Within the report, and just to emphasise now, we do recommend a degree of caution on that, particularly around waste types fly tipped. Often there's a sort of default mechanism with the way it's reported, so other household waste is a bit of a catch-all item for fly tipping, where there's it can be a number of items that are fly tipped. So just a bit of a health warning on that. So members will be able to see the positive progress that we've made on something like 42 out of the 44 actions. We have recently appointed last month a dedicated fly tipping and litter prevention officer within Andrew Osborne's team. So progress will continue and pick up a pace in the coming months and years as that post beds in. We are excellent, I would deem, in terms of how we deal with fly tipping once it's reported to us. The stretch targets that we got in terms of cleaning and clearing fly tipping, we perform very well, both in terms of the stretch targets and the targets that we have in terms of the strategy. I've consulted with enforcement colleagues just to provide a note that we will shortly provide in the deploying covert cameras on fly tipping hotspots in accordance with surveillance requirements. It is best practice for the locations of those cameras to remain known only by the person that puts them up and that person's line manager, just because there's been practice in the past of locations being sort of shared and known in the wider public, which isn't really good, for obvious reasons. And as I mentioned, there are sort of further fly tipping and litter prevention activities that will go on throughout the life of this strategy. And that introduces the report, Chair. Thank you.
Do any of the officers want to come in with any comments before we actually start any questioning? I know Councillor O'Connell got his hand up ready. No? Councillor O'Connell, did you want to come in with your question? Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Just before we go to the bulk of the questions that we want to ask, I just wanted to check on the fly tipping incident data you've got. It's from 2021, to 23. Do you have data that goes before that? I'm keen to know whether the changes that were introduced at the waste disposal centre in New Inn had any impact on the data going forward. So it was about that time those changes were brought in. Thank you.
So we do, and we can certainly share those figures with yourself, with wider colleagues as well. So we track fly tipping numbers, and we have a statutory duty to report those up through to the Environment Agency, or Environment Agency Wales as it is, each month and each quarter. So we can certainly provide that. What I would, forgive me, I will try not to repeat myself throughout this, but it is very challenging to try and draw correlation links between certain activities that the local authority has been doing and fly tipping. There is a wealth of evidence to show that restrictions at recycling centres, moving from weekly to fortnightly residual and potentially moving on beyond that, there's a very weak, if non-existent, causal link between those sorts of activities. It really is down to money in residents' money in residents' pockets as to whether they can get a sort of kitchen ripped out and pay a white van person who may go and fly tip it. Those are the kind of key causes, and it doesn't tend to be restrictions of residual waste restrictions at recycling centres, but we can certainly supply that pre-21-22 information. We can certainly go back sort of 4 or 5 years at least.
Thank you.
That's great. Thank you for that, Simon. You happy with that, Councillor O'Connell?
Yeah, all good. Thank you very much.
If you move on to the question, and there's nothing from the officers. If we look at objective 1, partnership working, Councillor Clarkson, would you like to do the first one? First question.
Yes, thank you, Chair. On reviewing the report, we'd be interested to know what enforcement work have the police carried out, as mentioned in Table 1, as we'd assumed that enforcement was the council's responsibility.
Mark, are you able to come in on that and just provide some more detail, please? You are on mute, Mark.
You're on mute, Mark.
And then perhaps Stephen afterwards. Thank you.
Yeah, so we have we take advice from the police basically on how we contact individuals and groups just to take advice on how we can better improve what we do on the fly tipping side of it. As I say, we ourselves don't. My team, we don't take forward the enforcement. It's usually environment. Steve Pulpit and John Clements' team that take away forward enforcement. So I think they'll be able to provide a better response on that.
Did you want to come back in with anything, Councillor Clarkson?
Yeah, just to clarify, so the partnership working with the police is around the advice on how sort of actual people who've been identified clearly as having caused a fly tip incident. That surely doesn't change that much, does it?
No. As I say, it's how we can progress enforcement. That's where we take the advice from the police. Yeah.
Right. So it's quite a loose partnership.
Yes, at the moment, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Parrish. Would you like to do the second question, please?
Yes, Chairman. What have the impacts of partnership working been, and what can be done better? And do you feel there are any groups missing who should be involved?
Sorry, Simon, shall I respond to that one as well? I'll give us a response on that.
Yes, please, Mark, if you could. Thank you.
Yeah, as I say, so currently, as I say, the main working partnership that we have is with Keep Wales Tidy, and that's through the Carry Camry project. So that's a project that was supposed to run from 2020 to 2023, so it's coming to an end now in 2023. This partnership provides us with the resources to go out and tackle some of the issues that we come across. So that's the main partnership that we have at the moment. Again, we've also worked previously with the probation services. Over the last couple of years, probation services have been privatised, so they're only now coming back into public service. So we lost that connection with them. So there's something that we'd like to re-establish, and previously that has been a positive partnership working situation. So we'd like to encourage that and take that forward again.
Thank you. Are there any other groups you can think of that you would like to get involved with?
At the moment, no. I think it's pretty the engagement that we have with groups at the moment is pretty positive. I don't think there's a lot more out there that we can do at the moment, but obviously as we progress, as the the fly tipping officer beds in as well, we'd be looking to broaden what we've already done.
Thank you.
You happy with that, Councillor Parish? Yeah.
It-
Councillor
it's-
Clarkson.
If I may, Chair,
I was
just to
going
add,
to say that before you come in, Councillor Clarkson, and Stephen Bullock come in. Yeah.
Good morning, all.
Yeah.
Just like to add to that, from an enforcement point of view, we're currently working on a cross-border serial fly tipper. We're working with Newport and Monmouthshire, and on another case, we're working with Natural Resource Wales to try and do a test purchase with trackers in the rubbish. Somebody who's hiding behind a fraudulent NRW registration. So, like Mark was saying, there's not many other people that we wish to drag in, but we are working with neighbouring authorities and the NRW from an enforcement point of view.
Okay. Simon, did you want to come in before?
If I can, just just building on the excellent question from Councillor Parish. One of the things that's worked well in the past with the local authority that I've worked with previously is, and we don't have it on the list that is on table 1, is DIY organisations, so B&Q and Wix and that sort of thing. And it can be really effective to do some promotions campaigns, particularly around sort of bank holidays, to make people aware of fly tipping and their obligations about sort of disposing of their waste. So a great example is, if you're going to refit your kitchen or do some work, we're there as customers sort of leave the building, leave the shops, just with a leaflet, just explaining what their responsibilities are and what the risks of fly tipping are. So that has been shown in the past to give some traction. And Councillor Parish, you did ask about impact. It is very difficult to, as I said, kind of judge impact from the activities, which are all good and they're all valid, to impacts on sort of fly tipping prevalence and that sort of thing. But the one thing I would add to this, and I'm happy to sort of take it forward as an action, is that work with sort of, I think it's a better word to call them, but the Wix and the DIY superstores and that sort of thing in and around Torvine.
Okay, thank you for that, Simon. Okay, Councillor Parish, Councillor Clarkson, you want to add something supplementary to that?
Yes, please, if I could. Carol Cymru, so that's due to come to an end in March, end of March, I believe. Have you got any idea what will be replacing that scheme? And I'd also just like to note that on checking their map of volunteers, there are no litter picking groups from Torvine actually registered on it. So we may be missing a trick there with using Keep Wales Tidy's project officer.
Yeah, so sorry, Councillor Clarkson's correct that the Carry Cymru scheme is coming to an end now at the end of this month. I attended the meeting with Keep Wales Tidy on Monday, and although they put in a number of applications for additional funding, at the moment they haven't received any favourable responses. So currently there is there's nothing in place nothing in place to replace Carry Cymru as we speak this moment. Yeah. Going back to the question with groups, I think Keep Wales Tidy, they work more with individuals than they do with groups. They've got their litter champions. As a council, we tend to work more with groups, and that's what we'll do as part of the new fly tipping officer. We'll be looking to contact and put a social media campaign out to contact groups so that we're able to provide support to groups, existing groups within Torvine. We have got a number of groups on our books, but obviously we'd like to, anybody else who's working out there, we would like to take them under our umbrella to provide support for them.
Through the chair, could I just come back on that quickly?
Well, then, Councillor.
Fly tipping Wales seems to be one of the obvious partners missing from the list. I know as a community group, we've worked with them a lot.
Okay, thanks for that, Councillor Clarkson. Councillor Ing, you got a question?
Yeah, just wondering, I'm not seeing any housing associations listed on there.
Yeah, that's a good point, Councillor Haynes. That's something that we can look to groups that we can make contact with. So that's something we can add to our list.
I just think, just to come back, I just think that with housing associations, I mean, I'm not familiar with all of the Torfaen, but, you know, I can only speak sort of from my standpoint is that, you know, more than probably 50% of fly tipping comes from housing association owned pieces of land. And I think they are probably one of the bigger partners that we should be working with, along with all of the others that are very important, but most of those don't own land that experience the level of fly tipping that some housing associations do.
Sorry, Jay, can I come back in on that, please?
Yeah, by all means, yeah.
Yeah, certainly. Keep Wales Tidy, they were just starting up a social landlord programme, I think, which is something that we could really connect into. So that's something I'll make a note of, maybe bringing the housing associations into that as well, and maybe make it part of their wider campaign.
Councillor Ashley, you've got a question you want to ask?
Mark, have you got you or Keep Wales Tidy got a database of local contacts? Because obviously the questions the last couple of questions we've had, obviously we got churches, we got local groups I know of which are not on here as well. So it just seems that if we got, I mean, Rosie Seaborn must have had good few contacts here. Is that information available? It would be useful for this committee to have it.
Mark, you're on mute.
Yeah, you're correct, Councillor Ashley. As I say, Rosie,
I've within Pontnewydd, for instance, and I'm not being parochial, Chair. We've got the Canal Group with Hugh Woodford. We've got the local churches. We've got a whole lot of these groups. We'll go a bit on further on this, but it would be useful just to have a database of who's out there.
Yeah, I can do that. As I say, Rosie would have put together a database.
Sorry, Mark, I might need some more work to do. I know, but I mean, even allotments do this as well.
Yeah, that's fine. As I say, and I can also contact our Keep Wales Tidy officer to see what database he's got as well.
Thank you.
That's great. Thanks for that, Councillor Ashley. Councillor Haynes, would you like to do the next question, number 3, please?
Of course. How can we encourage Welsh Government to become more supportive of local authorities trying to tackle the issues around litter?
If I may, Chair, litter can be sort of tackled in a couple of ways. If you're asking for what I'd like to help tackle litter, really it's staff, resources and funding. What we could potentially put that towards, colleagues may have heard of an organisation called Kingdom, who have worked with a number of local authorities in the past. I see shakes of heads. If we're talking about litter, it can be these difficult conversations that we need to have. So, in case colleagues aren't aware, so an organisation like Kingdom can put litter enforcement officers on the street, and with the appropriate powers, fine people that litter. There is obviously, as you may have seen, and you may figure out if you haven't seen, the kind of public backlash, the press articles that appear in the newspaper when people are fined for dropping litter kind of accidentally, or pouring away a cup of coffee down a drain. These are the kind of key things that get reported in the press. It does show, so in Bristol, in one of my previous local authorities, it does show the outcome that you want, which is a reduction in litter. The press is what I've heard termed good bad press, although there are the articles that I've mentioned about pouring a cup of coffee down a drain, and that attracting a fine. You will actually find a lot of supporting comments under the news articles as well, because no one likes litter, and people are aware that it's a very small minority of the population that are litter, and actually having the appropriate action against them is can garner quite a lot of sort of public support. It's not something I'm at the moment recommending for Torvine. If we're talking kind of hypothetically, if we can have the staff, we can have the resources. That's one way of tackling litter.
Okay, thanks for that. Councillor Ash, you got a supplementary to that, I see.
Sorry, it's my head that was shaking and mentioned the word kingdom. Sorry about that, Simon. I'm sure you're aware of that. Now, we're talking partnership working, and I think this question was mentioned in that and context to that. When we come to the bit section 9, I'll have a comment on that then. I don't want to be negative at all because I understand where you're coming from. The partnership working was in the context of this question and the Welsh Government and local authorities was actually how we get our partners to work in conjunction with, I think. And I think it's the positives there without looking at the heavy hand bit, which is section 9 when we get to it.
Anybody want to answer that, or do you want to take that on later?
Well, no, I think the partnership context is the one I would like to hear, Chair.
Right.
Look, I think there's a lot of opportunities here. We just talked about all the people we're working with. They obviously got a mission which is positive, go out and get litter, but they've also felt moved to go and do that. So I would be interested to hear what officers, how they feel we can work with our partner. You know, all these people, individuals and organisations that are moved to go out there and do it, including some religious organisations, which I think is really interesting.
Okay, Stuart, would you like to come back in? Anybody, Simon, or?
Sean, would you like to come in on the sort of litter groups that we've got? I'm happy to if needs be, but I thought you might have more on the ground sort of information to pass along.
Obviously, from a street scene operational point of view, we have numerous amount of litter champions groups that are out there most days, particularly on the weekend, that carry out community litter picks. And we support them with, I think Mark does probably more than I do, support them with equipment and bags and sort of to carry out the litter picks. I kind of give them ideas of where they can go to, which obviously they work alongside our cyclical cleansing schedule. So we give advice to those to where they can go within their local community to help us and what we do on a daily basis. The amount of volume, we encourage them wholeheartedly to get involved within their community and with groups, and even our friends groups within our parks obviously fall into that category as well. You mentioned other categories, with churches and stuff. There are individuals that are attached to a church that will go out, again, they're individuals, not always groups necessarily, that will go out and play their part and carry out community litter picks. And yeah, it's overwhelming the amount of calls I get on a weekly, daily, monthly basis where we have to do community clean-up collections, which is really encouraging that the actual interaction that we have within the borough is massive.
Thank you for that, Sean.
Thank you, Sean, for that. Councillor Clarkson, did you want to come in with a supplementary?
Yeah, I'll try and be brief. Having just identified Carrow Cymru is going to be no more and identified the huge amount of volunteers that we've got out there, how are we going to go forward after March, and also with the loss of our sort of volunteer coordinator, to try and improve and make this as easy as possible for volunteer groups? I've recently had to ask for information myself about who we contact now for new bags and things like that, and tried to sign someone up to litter picking, and the form that came back it wasn't really specific to litter picking. It was more like a ranger type role that it was covering with, if you're out in exposed places, whereas most litter pickers are around streets and houses. So, it's about supporting and now going forward and what we can do and what we can implement to make sure that that's all in place.
Yes. Is it okay if I come back on this one?
Yes.
Please do, Mark.
Yeah, yes. As I say, well, I think a lot of you here work with Rosie Seaborn. I know Rosie Seaborn was our volunteer coordinator, and she worked with individuals and groups as well. Now that role has been continuing now into the new fly tipping and prevention, litter and fly tipping prevention officer post. So that individual now will be the contact for groups and individuals for any support that they need when they litter picking.
Okay, thanks for that. We'll now move on to objective 2, promoting awareness and understanding through education. That's question number 4. Well, Councillor Thomas, would you like to read out that one?
Thank you, Chair. How are you promoting awareness? As we have received feedback from residents to say they are unaware of any promotional activities at the moment.
Mark, I know you were working on a response to this, please.
Yes. Sorry, excuse me. Yes, so the promotional side of it, a lot of our promotional work, or the promotional information that we get comes from Keep Wales Tidy. So it's particularly through Carry Cymru, so any promotional events or new initiatives that they bring forward, they will promote on a national basis, and then as a council, the information that comes through to us, we'll promote that information then through our social media sites, through community events where we attend community events. So that's how we get this information through to groups and individuals.
You okay with that? Would you like to come back with any supplementary, Councillor Thomas?
Can I ask, would that be part of the role of the new officer as well to help promote things?
Yes, it will. Yes. So it's quite a wide-ranging role of this new litter and fly tipping prevention officer. So as I say, it's working with groups, and obviously it's getting information then from bodies like Keep Wales Tidy, how we disperse that information through the local groups and individuals.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you.
Can I come in as well, Chair, just to add into that? Yeah. So just in terms of promotion particularly on fly tipping, I'm sure colleagues are aware, lots and lots of people, probably the whole population, are aware of fly tipping. They see it, it's an eyesore, it's a terrible thing, and a significant nuisance. The number of people that actually do the fly tipping are probably no more than in sort of double digits. So to do a sort of county-wide campaign, which really does some sort of really wide-ranging sort of singing and dancing about sort of fly tipping awareness, is probably not going to have too much traction. What you want to do with promotion and awareness of fly tipping is to really sort of target those that are most likely to fly tip or engage with sort of fly tippers, which is why, kind of coming back to the sort of DIY superstores, those that are kind of ripping out their kitchen, just making sure that they're dealing with a reputable sort of waste supplier or waste disposal supplier when they come to get rid of their material in their skip or what have you. So I'm not surprised that although certain people have an interest in sort of fly tipping, if they're not aware of it, that doesn't mean to say that the targeted communication isn't necessarily effective. It needs to be sort of targeted to be sort of value for money and effective.
Okay, thank you. That's fine. Councillor Clarkson, did you want to come up with a supplementary?
Yes, please. I think this is where Fly Tipping Wales comes into place. Very few residents are aware of their obligation under the new Welsh Government legislation, that if it's their rubbish that's found and they can't demonstrate that they've made all the checks that they're using a reputable waste transfer operator, that a fine can actually fall to them. I share a lot of Fly Tipping Wales' information because they focus heavily on that type of thing, informing people about their responsibilities, and that would be promotional information that we would be just sharing in the same way that we share Keep Wales Tidy. And I think that's a bigger incentive for households to make sure they've checked that their waste transfer operator's got a licence and that they've asked where they're going to dispose of the rubbish. Because at the moment people are just ad hoc getting these companies of social media, But, you know, if we could put a lot more effort into explaining to people what their obligations are under the new Welsh Government legislation, just by using Fly Tipping Wales's information.
Anybody want to come back in on that, or is it just a...
Absolutely correct. Yeah, I have no argument with that. As you rightly say, Councillor Clarkson. So it's the waste, we call them waste producers' responsibility to look after their waste and make sure that anyone carrying waste off their premises or whatever is correctly registered as a waste carrier. As Charlotte and I'm sure Stephen will say, we look for incriminating evidence on every fly tip when it's there, and if you've given a disreputable waste carrier a bag of your rubbish and it's got identifying material on it, then the notices, the enforcement action will be served on you as a property owner, and there's no defence to say, well, I wasn't the one that physically fly tipped. It's your responsibility as a waste producer to make sure that you're dealing with a registered waste carrier. So absolutely right, that needs to be where the promotion is, to let residents know their responsibility.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Ashley, you've got a quick question, because there's quite a lot of questions we've got to ask.
Yeah, no, I'm well aware of that. That's why I've been very brief, to be quite honest. It struck me just now, as we've been going through, you've killed the scrappy problem by having licensed scrap dealers. I'm wondering, I know we've talked about it, the licensed waste carriers. Is there any way in which we can use that same system for White Man Brand? Because it does seem they're a bigger problem, but certainly that whole system, the one you've done with the scrappies, and the guys there seem to be relatively very responsible there. There ain't much of that going on at the moment. I'm just wondering whether with this, or is it a whole different ballpark? I've seen quite horrendous documentaries on said subject, but similar system, maybe.
Who would like to come back on that?
To be honest with you, I will need to research that a bit more. I'm just sort of looking around colleagues.
I just wonder because, you know, the guys, everybody gets that you put your scrap out, the guys come round, Sunday it seems to be the day, and it works very well round here. And I'm just wondering where a system of license that we all know about, which is the key thing with the scrappy boys, and we know them, whether something like that could be done in the area for waste disposal, because it's a bit of a Hobson's choice.
I mean, there's different economies at work here. Obviously, the depending on sort of scrap metal prices, the scrappy will come round and remove it and make themselves very aware. So in terms of engagement with the scrappies, I don't like using that phrase, but it's quite easy and obvious. White Man Men won't necessarily advertise, and there will be a commercial transaction, so it's normally 20, 30, 40 quid or whatever, and I'll get rid of this pile of waste out the front of your house, and that will go away in a van which is completely unmarked and could be used for sort of any purposes. So like I said, I'll need to go away and just look into what the ins and outs of the scrappy system was that was brought in that's apparently quite effective, and whether we could do something similar on that side of things, but it would certainly need a Welsh Government approach of some flavour.
Steve, without prolonging this too long, what we used to do as members, we used to put members remember this. We used to have community skips for people as well, but we got inundated. So there's the problem there for a lot of us, about how you deal with that effectively. Bearing in mind, there are people that can't afford this, and it's up. And I have worked with Mr. Bullpit and company regards to community dumping, which has been a problem. So there is an issue here, which I'd love to talk to you about, but not at this meeting, where we can, community getting rid of things, fly tipping being one of them, and people having stuff in their houses, which is not skip country. There is an issue here altogether.
Forgive me, Chair. I mean, yes, absolutely. We can talk about that. Just briefly, I would counsel against any sort of recommended sort of bring sites or community skip idea. They do go in there. They do get abused, yes, by commercial. I think there is a bit Torvine could do around promotion of sort of reuse charities. If people have sort of cupboards and chest of drawers or tables or whatever it is, just to make sure that they go to charity first, any of our reuse shops second, bulky waste or to the recycling centre, sort of third or fourth, wherever we are on that. That would be the sort of promotion we should be pushing.
I would totally support the 3
Stuart,
R's
can
approach.
I cut in, Stuart?
Yeah.
We've got a lot to get through.
Yeah, Steve, I was trying not to go there.
Of the time, you know.
Steve, I was trying not to go there. It's just that this is a big issue underlying the fly tipping problem.
Yeah, I understand that, but we've got such a lot to get through. It's such a lot of questions to put through, you know. We've only got a limited amount of time, so.
Yeah, Steve, I understand.
The questions short, if you could, please.
Yeah, I'm trying to.
If we go on to objective 3, educating children and young people through schools. Councillor Hall, would you like to do question 5, please?
Of course. 2 schools have currently taken up the challenge to adopt litter-free zones out of 32 schools in Torfaen. How do you intend on getting the other schools on board, and what has been the delay in doing so up to now?
If I can look to Mark for this one, I'm sure he's got all the answers.
To be honest, with you, Councillor, up to now, we've approached schools through the Carry Current scheme. So it's a letter email that goes out to the schools and asking if they want to be involved in a litter pick during the spring clean events. And then once we get the contact with the schools, that's when we take it on. Unfortunately, as you say, last year only 2 schools took up our offer of working with them. How we go about encourage them, I know there was a conversation to be had with our the chief officer in the education in education. He was going to try and persuade schools to get more involved with us. But as I say, that's where we are at the moment. So again, we've as part of this spring clean that's going to take place at the end of this month, we've again written to the schools, and we're just waiting for responses. How we encourage more schools to participate, I'm not quite sure. But as I say, we'll keep on trying. And those schools who will contact us, who do come back with us, we'll work with them.
Okay.
Okay with that, Councillor?
Yeah, can I just come back on that? The 2 schools that are currently doing it, they are obviously promoting it through their own schools. Can we use those as examples to show other schools that it's what they're doing?
Yes, we could. Yes, yeah. I'll get those schools. I can get the details of those schools. Pass them on.
That would be useful. If they're doing it, if they're showing what they're doing, it might encourage other people to be able to do the same.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Horner. Question 6, Councillor O'Connell, would you like to do that?
Yep, sure. Environmental awareness should be on the curriculum of all primary schools. So how do you ensure that you engage with schools via this forum?
Really good question. So it's really good to look to the county plan on this. We've got some objectives in terms of eco schools, which tends to be quite a school-led activity, and trying to move schools from sort of bronze up to gold, making sure they've got their eco councils, and those eco councils will oftentimes be the ones that are out kind of litter picking and that sort of thing. Without sort of going into too much detail, one of the best things to be cognizant of when you're working with schools is time of year. It can be very difficult at this time of year, particularly with I was going to say SATs, but Wales don't have SATs. It's my kids that have SATs. It can be very difficult to sort of get traction to get these sort of groups up and engaged, and that sort of thing. So after the Easter half term, things tend to open up, particularly around the kind of environmental awareness and having those conversations and allowing us to go into schools and deliver education, deliver assemblies and workshops and that sort of thing. I've done it in the past. I started out doing waste education assemblies and that sort of thing. And I remember after Easter, your diary just gets full with 3 and 4 school visits each day, because they do see it as a valuable thing. It is left to the end of the year. end of the school year rather. But I'd be surprised if we'd again contacted all schools and at least half of them didn't come back positively with some offers of dates and times when we can come in and do assemblies. But like I said, just making sure that email goes out at the right time, making sure schools have got capacity.
We okay with that?
Yeah, just 2 quick points from me.
Yep.
Is there a Welsh Assembly angle here where we need to engage the educational department there to try and affect the curriculum, a bit more proactively to make sure this that the idea of waste in the environment is featured a bit more heavily than it is currently? And secondly, it sounds like we're going to use that term resource again, where you could do with an extra pair of hands to go around schools and conduct those type of activities that you've just described there. Is that something that the newly employed fly tipping officer, for want of a better word, is going to be doing?
Can we answer
yes.
that back to front? You, yeah, okay, Mark.
Oh, sorry, Simon. Just
yes, yeah, you go first.
Sorry, just to confirm that it will be part of the litter and fly tipping officer's role to go over and engage with schools. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, Simon.
Yeah.
And just to complete the circle as well, so we have got a programme on the waste side of things. I don't want to get into it to waste, but we are working with the waste colleague that works on communications, promoting recycling at the household and that sort of thing. They will be working in conjunction with the litter and fly tipping officer as well, so we get that sort of rounded approach. In terms of engagement with Welsh Government, I come from 2 previous English local authorities. Before that, it was a Welsh local authority, and Welsh Government in terms of education and making sure that the environmental awareness conversation is just bedded within the curriculum is much more advanced with when you compare it to other United Kingdom nations. So I'd say that it's already in a good position. We do get traction from schools. They're aware of it, and for me it's really around delivering on that opportunity. So for example, both the waste and the environment team are now refocusing on kids education, because oftentimes it's the kids that will be doing the litter picking with the parents. It's the kids that do the recycling at home, at least until teen years, and it's making sure we're getting them pointed in the right direction.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cole. Councillor Ashley, did you want to come in and supplement?
Yeah, there was. Combined community councils for the last 20 years, probably more in my experience, has had an environmental quiz. It does, and I'm chair of the Environmental Planning and Sustainability Committee. Are you aware that we actually spend quite a lot of money as a community council? And I suspect Pontypool and the other community councils does. Are you aware that you're pushing an open door there with regard to schools? I don't know if you're aware of that.
Yes, I'd expect so. I think we did caveat that within this report, they're aware that we could be doing better on a number of areas. As Mark said, we've got the resource now, which will focus on a number of things, with schools activities sort of being one of them.
I also, the other question, the canal officer and the environmental lot, you've got a multifaceted thing there, partnership working within the council. Are you actually doing that as part of this as well? I mean, you mentioned the waste, but you've also got environment. It should be part of a package, shouldn't it, within the council partnership working? I know cross-boundary is a difficult one for you because Mark, for instance, does a whole lot of things within his job titles. I know that. There's something joined up thinking within the council would be useful, wouldn't it? I can see you smiling.
Yes, there is. Just in terms of time, so within sort of Rachel Jowett's directorate, we all communicate and coordinate with each other. So yes, we've got not within my team, but in Mark Thomas's team. Rachel's deputy, there's the canal officer, there's biodiversity and climate change officer as well, all doing school groups. As I mentioned, we've got the county plan, and that's reflected through into our service plan. So I know exactly what assemblies are taking place in terms of canal discussions and biodiversity discussions and climate change discussions. So we're aware, and we have a coordinated approach for that.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. You covered that on question 7, Stuart, so that was quite good. If you move on to item, objective 4, then working with local businesses. If I can ask Councillor Clarkson to do that one then.
Ask the question yet, Chair? You haven't asked me.
I know the reason is, Stuart, I'm trying to bring people in because you're asking quite a lot of supplementary. So
Okay.
you're next on my list, actually.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, you ready for me to go with this question, Chair?
Yeah. Would
Okay.
you like to have a Councillor Haynes? Did you have something about the last question, or?
No, it was just clarity on what they mean by fast food restaurants in Torvine.
Well, hopefully we get an explanation when they ask a question now. Thanks for that.
Okay, so objective 4, working with local businesses. The report states that there's been a limited response to date from fast food outlets to adopting litter-free zones again. This was also a problem when the topic was scrutinised previously. How have you engaged with businesses up until now? What do you intend to do differently to engage with these businesses going forward if current activities and engagement haven't worked?
Who would like to come in on that one?
Are you okay to, Mark? Please.
Simon, yeah.
And the definition as well as fast food restaurants, please.
Yeah, so fast food restaurants, we class as your McDonald's, your Burger Kings, that type of restaurant. So these are the people that we've been in contact with. As I say, normally, it's we write to the individual businesses themselves, and we wait for response. We have a limit, as I say, we've had limited response. So what we intend to do now is write to their head offices to see if they can be persuasive for individual restaurants to be more interactive with us on the issue of litter-free zones around those, around the properties. That's what we're looking to do going forward.
Anybody want to add anything? Councillor Haynes, did you want to add anything on that?
Thank you. This is my topic, really, isn't it? I'm being a little bit specific here, but I was very aware that Pontypool McDonald's used to have bins and a litter picking member of staff that used to go out on an hourly basis. I use the petrol garage there and I don't see any of the bins still in place. And it seems to be that it's taken a backward step, not a forward step. But I'm also mindful that over the last 3 years, there's been, the hospitality industry has been really badly affected by COVID. And moving forward, even more so with the uncapped increases on utilities. There's no protection for businesses there, unlike, you know, residential properties. And I can only speak from my own personal experience, giving it as an example. My electricity is going up 300%. And I think we need to be mindful when we're asking businesses to be, you know, to have litter-free zones, that if it's at a cost, then that might be the part that's now restricting them.
Okay, would like to come back in on that? Any comments on that?
Yeah, as I say, I think McDonald's is one of the successes we had with the communication that we had with the litter-free. With these litter-free zones in these types of businesses. It's sad to hear that's dropped back, but obviously we will pick that up again with these individual restaurants. As for the issue of, you know, we all understand the current situation that as individuals and businesses are in with the current energy crisis. So this is something that we will bear in mind, and this is where we will try to provide that support to help these businesses, so we can go there and attend and actually help them put these things in place. So that's hopefully will take a little bit of the burden off them at the moment.
if I could bring Simon in before I bring you back in, Councillor Clarkson, is that okay?
Yep.
Thank you, Chair. Just to add one extra bit, just on Mark's excellent comment. So some councils in the past have done bids, so business improvement district. It was one of the things I mentioned with community colleagues when I first arrived here, and it's just in case members aren't aware. So it's nothing more than a bunch of sort of local businesses and shops getting together and contributing a little bit extra, and then we can display some hanging baskets and have some jet washing and enhanced cleansing and all that sort of thing. And Councillor Haynes, you're absolutely right. The response back was it's a lot of businesses are sort of on that knife edge, and to be able to contribute a bit more, albeit not very much, for that enhanced kind of street scene, that enhanced kind of frontage to the shops, it probably just wasn't going to be palatable. It's worth keeping an eye on the option of bids of a business improvement district, but certainly in the current climate, it's just viewed as not possible.
You like that, Councillor Haynes?
Yeah, just a little bit of wider context, really, and because I only focused in on the cost of utilities, but there is a wider picture here in the hospitality industry, in that it isn't just the cost already outlined, but you have supplies that have gone up 300 or 400%. You've got increased wages. All of these things are the provision of pensions. It's all sort of ramped up over the last couple of years, and so the bigger picture is it isn't just about the litter-free zones and any costs, etc. It's all of that together is impacting on not just hospitality. There are other businesses out there, shops and sort of the care homes, etc. that also are experiencing these. And I think we just have to be mindful that when we're asking any business to contribute to anything, that it could be the straw that broke the camel's back, because some people might feel uncomfortable in refusing any financial request from the council, and I wouldn't want to see that to be the straw that broke the camel's back in a shop that sells candles or whatever it be, because it's difficult out there at the moment.
Thank you for that. Anyway, Councillor Clarkson, did you want to come back in?
Yes, please, and I'll be very brief, Chair. It's more of an observation. I endorse and welcome the fact that you'll be contacting head offices for the large chain stores, because that's where you'll get the push to the individual outlets to make changes within their policies. I know McDonald's have got a lot of environmental policies now, which may not be necessarily being dealt with on a individual shop, premise level. The other thing is, we've got a lot of small individual independent fast food outlets that do generate this sort of litter. A lot of them say to me, it's the cost of getting rid of the rubbish. If we're collecting it off the street, our customers may have dropped it, but that is, that's a litter pick off our premises. But then there is a cost to us to actually dispose of anything that we collect off the street. So I'm wondering whether that would be something that we could help the smaller businesses with regarding the disposal of anything that they collect in a litter-free zone.
Anybody want to comment on that, or is it just an observation?
Just so we would breach our statutory duty and I'm sure challenge various areas if we're off in certain organisations sort of free sort of waste collection. These businesses are welcome to engage in sort of community litter picking activities as part of what they do, and we will pick up like we would all the kind of the produce from that, all the kind of bags full of litter. Absolutely, we do that. But yeah, forgive me for being blunt. But as much as I do want to help out independents and SMEs and that sort of thing, it wouldn't be possible. It is their and their customers' responsibility to manage the kind of litter and what comes from their premises.
So on that, if they were doing a litter pick around the area, they could use the community litter pick facility to have that taken away.
If you know, I'm kind of looking at Sean really.
Yeah,
To me, it's it's fine. They could do a litter pick. It's part of the community. It's community clear up. Whether they're
I think
Sean.
what we used to, many years ago, we used to have a tidy shoppers code. Many years ago, we introduced a tidy shoppers code. And what we tried to do, we used to try and encourage, especially precinct shopping areas like your Green Meadows shops, your Fairwaters, your Stanley Road, your Blenheim Town Centre. And we used to try to introduce this tidy shoppers code for each individual shop owner to come out and litter pick at the frontage of their shop. And then obviously what we would do then, we would sort of arrange, we would then arrange to pick up the litter that was collected, or they would put it next to a litter bin that was in the vicinity of where the shop was. As long as they're demonstrating that they are actually picking up litter in the vicinity of the shop, and it is litter that we are actually collecting up, and there's no business waste being slipped into the bag. Not that I'm saying everybody would do that, but from an experience point of view, doing this for such a long time now, we do get experiences where it can be manipulated to their own benefit rather than for the benefit for the wider community. But if they're demonstrating that they are litter picking in the immediate area of their shop, I don't have an issue really with them booking that in as a community litter pick. Because what we're finding now is that we would check the bags anyway to make sure if we thought it wasn't genuine, then obviously we would relay that back to sort of the shop owner that kind of books it on then.
Yeah,
but
so there's scope.
Yeah, there's scope. We can't, we not to rule it out, but it has to be that they are genuinely picking up litter outside the shop and they can demonstrate that's what they're
Yeah,
that's what
understood.
they're doing.
That's great. That's something I can have a chat
Okay.
to our local outlets about.
Thank you, Councillor Clarkson. Councillor Haynes, did you want to come back in quickly? I'm just conscious we got a lot to go through.
Sorry, Steve. I just think that most businesses are mindful of the mess on their own land and in their own areas, and they are responsible for the litter that is generated on their own land. I know a number of businesses, including myself, that also litter picked on the public roads and paths around the businesses, but that is now stopping and has stopped because the new proposals for enforced recycling is having a big impact. I used to do community litter picks, and very often, if it was only a bag or two, I'd take it down to work and put it in my bin. And I'm not able to do that, and neither are other businesses anymore, because there is a push for recycling. So unless those businesses are recycling and not getting any help with the costs, it's a difficult scenario to deal with. And the other thing, there was a comment about these businesses generate the litter. The majority don't. It's the customers that buy products that then drive elsewhere or throw it out on the road outside where they are parked up. That's like accusing the council of the litter picking that residents do. It's not fair that businesses are being targeted as the culprit when it's actually the general public that are buying those goods that are doing the dropping of litter.
Yeah. Could I just remind members we've only got an hour left and we've not even got halfway through. So could we try and keep these questions or whatever as short as possible? Otherwise we're never going to get through. If I can ask Mark to come in first before I come to you, Nick. Is that okay?
Sure.
Yes, I'd just like to confirm that knowing Sean is happy to collect these bags from these businesses, we can convey that when we engage with them. Just wanted to repeat that, yeah.
Thank you. Nick,
Thank you. Just very quickly for me, as a business owner, the first job in my morning is to pick up what's outside my door. I want people to come into my shop. I don't want them to see litter. There are many businesses in the town that do that, but there are also businesses that create litter outside their doors. I'm seeing a lot of smokers that are working in premises in this area that stump their cigarettes outside the door. Isn't that litter? It's on their doorsteps. It's my big grief right now. I'm seeing many businesses in the town that have smokers that are just sticking their cigarette butts outside the door. It's a big grief. I'll leave it there.
Yeah, thanks for that, Councillor Ola. Nobody wants to come back on that, no? All right, we move on to the next question. Question 9, Councillor Ashley, do you want to do that one, please?
Sorry, I'm getting off mic. It's a long one, so listen carefully, as they say. The report states that there's been insufficient interest from businesses in sponsoring litter bins. That follows on from the last one, but the council endeavours to achieve this goal in future years. Have you reviewed the action by addressing why businesses are not interested? And is there a different action you could take forward to encourage more engagement? Sounds a bit of what we had before, doesn't it? I think is this Sean or is this Mark?
Yeah, who wants to come in on that one? I can't see Simon again. Well, he is there, yeah. You keep moving on the screen, look.
You're going round and round, Simon.
Yeah. Who wants to come in on that litter bins?
We did. I'll quickly answer this, but it's
Thank you, Sean.
That's right. Obviously, you know, we have a roundabout advertising scheme, and obviously we were looking at different ways where we could sort of maximise that scheme that we had in place. And the other alternatives we were looking at were litter bins and our waste wagons. Unfortunately, we didn't have. It may have been an error on our part that we probably didn't push it hard enough in the community for local businesses, or kind of looked at it sort of more detail about how it would work. But it's certainly something that we can pick up again. Obviously, our roundabout scheme is established, and obviously as part of the sort of the role within Mark's team, where they do deliver that side of our service with regards to sort of advertising opportunities on sort of council infrastructure, that we can definitely push to see whether we can get an uptake on businesses to advertise on our litter bins. So we can definitely push to do that again.
They're about 400 quid a go, aren't they, Sean?
What, for advertising or for buying bins?
I always say that buying bins is 400 because you keep telling me that. But is it gone up now?
No, the bins it's around about that mark where you take into installation costs. So what you would have, what probably need to look at it in a different way, where we used to be able to say that we would advertise the business, say on like a sticker, rather on the side of the bin. We could push to say, well, you know, you can purchase a bin and have it installed, and it will say on the bin that this was supplied by the local business instead. You might get a better sort of uptake on that. But again, as Councillor Haynes has already mentioned, you know, some businesses are in sort of dire straits at the moment, and at this time may not be the right option to sort of push that as a promotional option for businesses at this time.
I deliberately said this because it'd go out on the broadcast, you know that. And there might be some people, I mean, community councils are obviously quite keen to get their names on them. They've been doing it for years. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Stuart. That was a good follow-up. If you question 10, Councillor Parish, would you like to do that one, please?
Yes, I do that, Chairman. How will the new Welsh Government legislation on non-domestic recycling, where businesses will be required to recycle their material, help with the issue of litter around business premises?
I suppose I should take that being coming from the waste side. It's not an objective really within the non-domestic regs, within the change of the code of practice. The principal push certainly from Welsh Government is to increase recycling rate, so move stuff away from thermal treatment and landfill to recycling. That's the main objective. It's unlikely to have any impact on sort of litter and fly tipping. It's certainly not something that we've sort of modelled or considered in terms of our response to that, the consultation of those regs that went back in the middle of last month.
So, would you like to follow up anything with that, Councillor Parish?
No, it's fine.
Anybody else? Question 11's already been answered previously, so if you go to Question 12. Would Councillor Thomas like to do that one, please?
Thank you, Chair. Cumran Shopping has resource separation in their litter bins. Can more be done to encourage this elsewhere in the borough?
Sean, I don't know if you wanted
Yeah.
to lead off, and I'll happily supplement it as needed. Thank you. The effectiveness of on-street recycling.
We have tried it. We did have module bins where you had compartments for recycled, whether it was plastic or cans or glass, and then you'd have one for paper, and then you'd have your general litter that would go in. And unfortunately, it hasn't proved very successful in the fact that if a compartment gets, full, then they would then cross-contaminate into the other sections of the bin. We also found there was needles placed in the bins, which obviously became a worry for us with regards to sort of health and safety. And eventually we tried to persevere, and it got to the point where they weren't being used in the correct way, and that they were removed. So it's always something that we've sort of kind of stayed away from and kind of been tentative about looking at again, because if they're not used appropriately, then obviously cross-contamination, and then it can't be recycled. You also have to look at logistically from an operational point of view, that the bin has to then be emptied differently, because you'd have the general sort of waste compartment picked up, and then you have to make sure that the recyclable waste is then also collected and then disposed of in a different way. But yeah, we have been tentative, unfortunately, in kind of installing those type of bins in the borough. But not to say that we can't rule it out going forward, but at this present time, that's the experience we've had.
Could we look at when you said about emptying the bins, couldn't we look at the smart bins as well, technology for that?
I looked at smart bins. I did have a presentation from a lovely gentleman in Ireland, only back towards the end of the year, and we talked about smart, but they weren't smart bins in the sense they were recyclable. They were smart bins in the sense that they would self-compact via a solar panel, so we could have more capacity. But the cost of actually having those type of bins placed in sort of, if we looked at places like our lay-bys on the bypass where we do get a lot of waste, it was quite an extraordinary amount of money.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thanks for that question, Councillor Thomas. Councillor Ashley, do you want to supplement? It's going to be quick, please, if possible.
It's going to be very quick. I understand what you say about banks of bins. I'm just wondering where we get something that's worth recycling, and possibility there might be a cost back on it. Cans and glass are the two obvious ones. Is there a possibility you could have separate bins rather than ones in banks? Because cans and glass are a menace if they're stuck in the general recycling. I'm just wondering, or general rubbish even. As separate bins. Different question.
So just to give a kind of macro level view on this, so there is value in cans. So particularly aluminium cans are our most valuable. There's not really so much value in glass in terms of the money we get back for it. Albeit smashed glass is an absolute hazard that we jump on as soon as possible. The most effective way of getting recycling off the streets, if we can kind of call it that, as Sean said, it's not having sort of separate kind of podded bins. It's actually crews doing almost a negative pick, getting when they open the bins, getting a litter picker in there to fish out the cans, plastic and glass into recyclables. So it's the crews themselves doing the recycling, rather than having sort of separate bins or bin sensors with fill rates and things like that. It really is a sort of manual function that works best, and it's best led by the operatives rather than the public, making sure that recycling happens.
You're going to have the poor souls co-mingling, are you, on site? Oh, it doesn't matter. No, I've done a lot of recycling. I used to be one of the people that ran the company. No, I understand what you're saying. Thank you, Simon.
Thank you, Councillor Ashley.
Yeah.
If we can move on to question 13. Councillor Haynes, would you like to do that one, please?
Of course. Are you aware of any schemes where businesses encourage customers to bring their own packaging rather than using polystyrene or plastic? For example, and can we provide assistance with this? Pretty much could answer this one myself, though.
You didn't want to come in?
I can come in, yes. So it's worth, if members aren't aware, so it's worth doing a quick Google search after this, or any search engine, for DRS, which stands for Deposit Return Scheme. You know it's back in the old days of 5p on a Corona bottle, things like that. So in 2025, the Welsh Government plans to bring in a deposit return scheme for single-use items, Councillor Haynes. So it's things, like single-use items like a drinks bottle, any sort of plastic bottle, cans, glass bottles, things like that. So that's going to come in. There is a lot of sort of structure and governance to that, making sure you get the price right for the return and that sort of thing, making sure shops have those reverse vending machines or somewhere where they can store the material as it comes back to them. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done in the next 2 years, but that should encourage a degree of, that should reduce litter potentially going forward. In terms of the meantime, and encouraging reusable or compostable sort of cutlery and plates and that sort of thing, I think, forgive me, colleagues, there is some legislation coming down the line to reduce polystyrene in takeaway shops and that sort of thing. But I will need to come back just on the firm what that legislation is. But certainly for the deposit return scheme 2025, that will have a big impact on litter potentially.
Yeah. Councillor Haynes, did you want to come back in?
Yeah. There's definitely a massive move away from the use of polystyrene. I think some of the legislation's coming in April, the rest in October. But the bit about where businesses encourage customers to bring their own packaging rather than using polystyrene or plastic, there are businesses out there, I could name a few, but that wouldn't be appropriate, I assume, that actually offer a reduction in the price if you bring your own reusable cups. There are people that are sort of offer a stamp card. There are lots of places you can bring your own takeaway receptacles for food. So there are businesses out there that are already doing that. But I think that more could be done working with individual businesses to help with that. Although, of course, the cost implication of switching from polystyrene to the more eco-friendly, from personal experience, sometimes they are 200% dearer to move to.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Councillor Haynes. Anybody want to come back in that, or can we move on to our Councillor Ashley's question?
Yeah, no, I asked this question because I went to One Voice Wales conference on innovation, and I believe it was Mould Council, and one of the Powys councils was operating a scheme, Elizabeth might like this even, where they were paying local takeaway people to actually move away from in their town, move away from plastic, certainly polystyrene, to other ways of dealing with things, certainly disposable paper and plating schemes, to actually, to subsidise that. Now, we've got some lists of those type of schemes, and I would like to maybe pilot them some areas if businesses are interested as a possibility. So I'm wondering whether you would support that, even because country councils are in position to do that. And if it gets rid of plastic and the reuse thing, and the new legislation is following, we've also got several. I know of one pub in our area that's actually doing it on an ad hoc basis, and she's been doing it for some time. Now, it's good that people, as Elizabeth says, are taking it on themselves to do it. Take a plate down, I'll put you a Sunday roast dinner on it, that sort of thing. It's a bit like the Indian and the old Indian and Japanese systems, bento boxes and tally boxes. It's that sort of, we could get rid of this mountain of plastic so you guys don't have to deal with it. It's
make a
if
point,
you,
Stuart, 'cause we're
yeah, I'm
pointing to the
asking whether
point,
you
yeah.
can. The point I'm asking is whether you support it and whether we can run some local pilots on it. It seems a sensible thing to do.
Thank you, Stuart.
In terms of reuse, I can think of no reason why we wouldn't want to promote that. It would probably potentially be a cost saving for the business, certainly for the customer. If we could go down that route, that would certainly be my preference. We have mentioned sort of compostable alternatives to polystyrene and that sort of thing. I would like to sort of shy away from that a bit, only because some of these sort of types of packaging is labelled as compostable or biodegradable or even degradable. And that doesn't necessarily mean that it can go into our sort of garden waste bins or food waste bins and get composted easily. Oftentimes that can create some contamination. Absolutely on the reuse side of things, and encouraging that reuse from customers coming in. Absolutely, yeah, 100% behind that, and we should certainly build that into our litter and fire tipping prevention strategy going forward. That's a worthwhile recommendation.
I take your point. I take your point on the stuff that's not what it seems. Being an organic gardener for years, no, but it should be stuff that's usable. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Stuart, for that. Councillor Haller, would you like to do question 15? Question 14 has been covered. Okay. Already.
Can we have data to support how you're working with supermarkets to reduce issues with trolleys?
Come on, Mark. I know you got the data.
Trolley dollies.
Thanks, Simon. Yeah, as I say, it's something we've been working with supermarkets for a while now. At the moment, as I say, I think we all know that it's a major issue, and we encourage all residents to report any trolleys that they find to Trolleywise or Colax, which Colax is the recovery company that Asda use. So that's where we are at the moment. We're also engaged with Asda, who are planning to put in a trolley stop to stop people actually taking out taking trolleys from outside the perimeter of the business. Now, as I say, this has been going on for quite some time. As I say, we lost Rosie back in last August, so it's something we haven't been able to pick up until now, but we are pursuing it with Asda now, and we're just waiting for an update of where we are with it. It's going forward, so if this is successful, then hopefully we can use this as a bit of an exemplar project where other supermarkets can follow suit. We can't promise that because obviously it's all down to resources of these individual supermarkets, but it's something I think as a council we would like, if it proves successful in Asda, it's something that we'd like to push out to all the supermarkets within Torfaen.
Thank you, Mark.
All right, Nick, for that. Yeah. Councillor O'Connell, did you want to come in? And if you can do question 16 as well after.
Yeah, just very quickly. Asda's in my ward, so we met with, that's why I had the business card here on my desk. We met with the Asda team a week or two ago with my ward colleagues, and what they're doing is putting effectively brakes on the trolley, so small brakes on 2 of the 4 corners. Those brakes will be activated magnetically when you try and push the trolleys out of the area. What they've been super proactive, really, really good in what they've done. They've made an investment themselves, and if you're encouraging other supermarkets to do the same, then wholeheartedly support that. Do you want me to carry on with the next question then?
Yeah, if you could, yeah, that'd be great. Yeah.
Need to come in on this very quickly.
Sorry, Stuart wanted to come in. Sorry.
Yeah, look, 10 years ago when I was first to Borough Council, I think it was Ian Osman and I went down to Cardiff and looked at what they were doing. I'm glad to hear what you said, Jason. That's absolutely brilliant. Then we have the record in Britain of having 25,000 trolleys in Northville and a few over Southville, so I'm really glad to hear that. If that cures that problem, and they mainly were from that location, we had the record of Britain. It's a unique situation where we've got a town centre with these trolleys over there, and people do use them. So if that cures that problem, great. It is because, and the problem is that they mutate out to Pontnewid, and they mutate out to the rest of the place. So if you cure that problem, I would for one cheer. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Stuart. Councillor Ames, you want to come back in quickly if you could?
Yeah, just a quickie. It's just a quickie. I suppose this might be more for recommendation side, but I don't know whether to run it by officers. Could there be a suggestion maybe that you work with a cross-section of businesses to discuss the issue of litter collections, refuse recycling, the cost of moving away from polystyrene, etc., so that discussions can be had more in depth about the impact of that on both businesses and the services that deliver those.
Anybody like to come back in then, or was that just more of an observation when it comes to things?
More towards the recommendation.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah,
a bit of feedback off an officer about the idea.
Yeah, any officers like to come back in on
that? It seems perfectly reasonable. If I may, I think it'd be worth. Sometimes you get like business breakfasts and things like that, so it'd be worthwhile engaging with those groups, like you say, Councillor Haynes, to talk about sort of litter, talk about street jet washing, recycling, all those sort of things, and just get an idea of what they want, what we can offer, and that sort of thing. Obviously, noting that if it can be cost neutral or as part of our service offering we do already, that would be the benefit, I think, for all parties. But yeah, we can certainly engage in those. Can't think of a better phrase to call them, but business breakfast groups.
Well, thank you for that. Councillor O'Connell, would you like to do question 16, please?
Yep. So reference objective 5, infrastructure review and investment. Why has there been such a delay on introducing the litter bin action plan, which was due to be carried out in 21-22?
Yes, there was a delay. Yes, well done. One after spotting. Realistically, and if I may, Sean, just before you come in, because it's it was delayed because it's a low risk. It's a low risk item. Every day, Sean has excellent operatives out there visiting not every litter bin every day, but litter bins, who will be surveying whether they're full, whether they're being used, whether there's litter around them, whether there's other areas that need a litter bin. Essentially, it's a daily activity, that litter bin action plan. But if I may, Sean, can I bring yourself in just to bring a bit more depth to that point, please?
Yeah, so recently all 5 area teams have carried out a litter bin audit in their patches, and they have returned them to me and have identified those bins that they felt that could be moved in a better patch within their areas, but staying sort of where they are, but kind of probably maybe further up the street, or maybe next to a bus stop where it would probably be a bit used more proactively. They've also identified bins that need replacing because they've now got to the point where they're now rusting away or the doors are broken, and a list is being extracted from all those 5 audits and put on the bin list for them to be replaced. I think all in all, we have a total of 520 litter bins throughout our 5 patches. Area 1 and Area 2, which is covering from Blenavon down to New Inn, are the 2 areas that have the most bins. And then the 3 remaining areas that go from sort of Upper Cwmbran, taking in the whole of the Cwmbran, is probably got the lesser amount of bins. All the bins are being used, like I said, effectively. I think we're at capacity in the north now, where because we only have a single person that empties those bins on a weekly basis, and some of those bins that are overly used, are emptied more frequently through the week. We're now at a capacity where we sort of have to be looking at a replacement programme in the north rather than an additional bins being placed in the north. And down in the south, we have obviously more replacement bins to look at. And certainly maybe I've worked with Crossy Ceiliog and Henflas where they've had asked for additional bins. And like, as you all know, when additional bins are requested, we like to monitor the sites of where the bins would like to be installed to ensure that it will benefit the local community and that it will be used. And I think we've done that quite well over several amount of years now, that we've done that really well, and we've put these bins where we are capturing places where bins are effective. Then the only downside, as you know as well, with litter bins is that we do have the issues with fly tipping and domestic waste being placed around or in the bins, so which is an ongoing issue that we are monitoring. We do extract evidence from, and we do forward that onto our public health team for further investigation.
Yeah, good information. I'm paraphrasing here, but is it fair to say that the reason that the action plan got delayed was a resourcing issue, because you were out actually doing the work rather than generating the action plan and a priority?
Yeah, we took the opportunity because in the winter, obviously, I kind of tasked. Unfortunately, I kind of had to task the charge arms themselves to go and say, right, put your team to where you need them to be doing their duties, and that you're going to have to take the time out. And you're going to have to go around your patch, and we need to have a kind of broad view of, the bins, where they're located, and, what condition they're in. So, yeah, we had to sort of make sure that was done.
Great, thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Ashley, would you like to do question 17? I know Shannon covered some of it, but some of it she haven't, so, yeah.
Yeah. I must admit, my hands all over this question. Sean, you might have heard it before as well, I suspect. Committee has last scrutinised the topic in September 2020, and recommendation was made and agreed on as follows. Committee endorsed a litter bin review and action plan and requested the following items be considered. Considering bin numbering, mapping to ensure bins are placed in strategic locations, which you've said just now, dual-use bins or trialling of smart bins, suitability of bins, and innovative ways to carry out collections or allocate locations. By the sound of it, you've had a good look at all that lot, I suspect.
The only thing I think I covered most of that but the one thing that you did bring up was about bin numbering, which I know you've raised a couple of times in the past.
Yeah.
And it's something, it's a good idea, because even the charge arms have brought it to us about sort of barcodes being placed on our litter bins, and that we can scan them when they've been emptied.
Yeah.
Obviously we need to look into that a little bit more. It turns us from going paperless, essentially, whereas the boys have schedules at the moment where they have to, fill out the dates of when they've emptied the bins now frequently. So, going forward, if you did have like a barcode scanning system where it could all be done electronically, that's definitely sort of the way to move forward. But we have to sort of look into that a bit more and sort of, cost it up and sort of see what's on the market to make that job quite an easy transition to do.
Well, I nicked the idea from the lampposts, because when we report lampposts, it's so easy just to say, PD for number, but I mean barcodes would be even better, to be quite frank, because when there is no lamppost in the borough, you can't locate on it. So better than saying the one down the lane, number 1, 2 or 3, whatever, that's why we said that.
And it's certainly like you mentioned, the mapping, the litter bin, there is a litter bin layer on the mapping system for people to view. But if you, like you said, if you had an electronic way of doing it, then you could easily map that onto a system where people can pinpoint it more accurately.
And you have certain pressure groups who love these, don't you? I'm mentioning no names. And quite rightly so. They then the condition survey of every one of them. We can all. No, I thank you for that. That's a reasonable answer. And you've got them mapped already. If you look on the system, with a few exceptions. No, I can't. That seems a very reasonable answer. And you commit to. You've already said you've got the action plan going, and the guys know the patch, which I accept. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you. Question 18 and 19 have been relatively covered in a lot of that conversation. So if we go on to objective 6, question 20, would Councillor Clarkson like to do that one, please?
Yeah, looking at the report, it was recognised that smashed glass was something that we weren't always hitting targets for. This is something that causes some concern, as it's often around play areas and public areas. So just wondering if what we can do to ensure performance improves and that this target is achieved, or whether we can improve on the actual target going forward.
Right, we're currently, if I just share with you, we're currently with smashed glass, at our target is 98%, and we're currently at 93.96 overall at the moment. Yeah, we've got 24 hours turnaround to deal with smashed glass, and if you look at it broadly across the number of calls we receive and the number of calls that we might lapse over that 24 hours, it's only a small amount of calls that we're actually lapsing on. So say, for instance, you had 6 calls in a month where you had smashed glass calls, and 5 of those you did within 24 hours. The impact of that one missed call is devastating to the overall percentage. So it sounds worse than what it is, but in terms of actual operationally dealing with the cause, we are kind of, we're nearly 100%, but that odd call, and it comes, not to make excuses, sometimes where you've got, because it's a fast response team, and they're dealing with dog fouling, they're dealing with fly tipping, they're dealing with fly posting, they deal with dead animals. If they've got a particular busy day and that call comes in, say at 3 o'clock, do you know what I mean? Sometimes it may fall into the next day and get sort of not overlooked, but kind of gets done, but it gets shut down too late because you've gone past that 24-hour. It's a technical thing sometimes rather than a performance thing.
Yeah, no, my experience in my ward has been good. It's just, it is a concern for the public. So it's something that, again, we need to maybe highlight a bit more of the positives to people.
Yeah. We constantly monitor it, and we do it every quarter, obviously through Simon. Simon obviously looks at what we do, and we constantly make sure that we're looking at the detail to make sure where this kind of delays are that's caused the percentage to go so low. So we're constantly monitoring all the time.
Thank you.
Thanks for that. If we could go to question 21, could Councillor Parish like to do that one, please?
Yes, Chairman. How much of the litter collected from the litter bins or fly tipped can be recycled?
I reckon that's an excellent
one. Wow. Good question. I don't know, Sian, if you want to tackle. I don't know that we'll have that data exactly, but it may be worth, Sian, if you want to talk about fly tipping, whether we multi-tip at the transfer station, whether we tip off recyclables, or whether it all just goes into residual.
Right, so with the fly tipping, depending, again, it's because the boys carry out such a multitude of jobs throughout the day, they will bring in a mixed load of waste when they go to the household waste recycling centre. What can be extracted out of that load is, because what happens is we tip into a separate area at the back of the transfer station, and then the FCC staff will then go through the waste and they will extract the recycling. So how much of that they extract from the tip, I can't. Unfortunately, I don't have the figures for that, but I do know that the majority of our loads that come in as fly tipping is sorted through at the tip, and it's recycled. Whatever can be extracted is recycled.
Good, thanks for that, Sian. Did you want to come back in, Councillor Parish, with anything?
Oh, that's fine. As long as it's being done now, that's fine. Thank you.
Yeah, it's an excellent one. Councillor Clarkson, you want to come back in?
Yeah, very briefly. Sian, does that account for community litter picks as well?
Right, unfortunately, if there's bulky items with the community litter picks that are picked up, then anything that can be extracted is extracted at the tip. Unfortunately, with I think it was mentioned in the questions about what can be recycled from the litter bins, again, like it has to be done at source. So like Simon's mentioned previously, you would have to extract all that out of the bag and do it at the curbside. And currently at the moment, that would be quite a resource intense, resourcefully wise. So at the moment, we don't extract recyclables from our litter bins at the moment or from the community litter picks, unless it's bulky.
Okay, thanks. Something to work on in the future.
Definitely something to look at in the future.
Yeah. Mark, did you want to come back in with that?
Yes, it's just following on from Sean. I know that Keep Wales Tidy with their individual litter champions, they are encouraging the individuals to try and recycle at source. So that's something we should bear in mind. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you very much. If you go on to Objective 7 and the Waste Service Operational Objectives, Councillor Thomas would like to do question 22, please.
Thank you, Chair. When will the work start where the street scene and waste teams coordinate on collection and street cleansing rounds, so that where possible, cleansing crews follow collection crews, and how will you prioritise the routes used?
As colleagues may be aware, obviously the kind of previous scrutiny we had, or that I attended rather, was on options around 3 and 4 weekly. When we have that, as and when we have a decision on where we're going with residual waste collection, we can then map rounds and then coordinate them with cleansing rounds. The work will happen over autumn this year, and then it will go into action in March next year. So it's a lot longer than we'd want, but we do want to get it right first time. So the work itself will be in action from March next year. So cleansing routes will follow collection routes where possible from next year. In terms of, as we sort of say within the report, you can't have 100%, every one of Sean's mechanical sweepers following around behind every one of the recycling wagons. There's just way more recycling and refuse wagons than there are of Sean's excellent sweepers. So I'm sure Sean would like to come in and just sort of give a sort of prioritisation view as to how the kind of cleansing is done around sort of Torvine. Obviously, collection routes will be done once a week for recycling and food, and then however long we decide on for residual.
Currently, in fairness to all 5 area teams, they do know when the collections take place. So as you know, we're on a 10-day litter pick cleansing cycle, and obviously that mechanical sweeper obviously comes along with the litter pickers as well. And what they do is they prioritise where they got their hotspot areas then. So, your Trevethens, the Thornhills, where you've got the recycling that comes through. And if they're approaching that patch then on their cycle, they will make sure that they wait for that collections to come through, and then they'll come round and do their cleansing. We can't do that in all areas, because obviously we've got, a week's of collections going into a fortnightly sort of cleanse. But the boys, the teams do pick up where their hotspots are, where they may get sort of additional especially in windy days, where you get that additional litter that might have come out of some recycling boxes. They will come around and after the collection has gone through. But like I said, we can't do it everywhere, I'm afraid.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, and thank you, Sean, for that. Councillor Hall, would you like to do question 23, please?
Yep. How much waste left over after collection is reported, and how much is collected as a result of inspections?
Would like to follow up on that.
Really good question. So, being blunt, I don't know. So as colleagues may be aware, we're recently bringing in a new sort of bit of software within the council, a new sort of CRM, the way that residents interact with us. One of the things we're going to make sure is there, if it's not already, and forgive me for not knowing this, is a clear kind of reporting mechanism, which will be litter following collections or some sort of variation of that reporting. That will help us on the waste side, so we can go back to those crews and say, you know, you've had 3 reports last week of litter following your collections. You know, do you need to be retrained? Do you have, you know, the SWIPs, spill kits and brushes and things like that to make sure you're clean after collections? So certainly for the next scrutiny, we can have that information. We can have that data for you. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah. Excellent question. That one I thought myself. Question 24, Councillor Haynes, would you like to do that one, please?
Thank you, Chair. Yes. What extra education can be used to encourage better use of the black recycling boxes to help reduce wind-blown items? But on the back of that, can I also add to that and say, is there any planned review of the receptacles that we use? Because I'm mindful of the number of complaints about the open boxes, and in comparison to some of our neighbouring authorities who seem to have a slightly better success rate with the receptacles that they choose. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, excellent, thank you.
Yeah, so valid question. There's no silver bullet, unfortunately, for this. There's other local authorities that may have sort of different makeups, but we've got the black boxes. We offer and we do give out quite a lot of nets. We've had lids in the past, so like a firm sort of plastic lids. They can be better. They can blow away themselves and actually be part of the problem. There is no sort of silver bullet with this. What we do is we encourage residents as much as possible to present their recycling in a sort of sheltered spot. If it is refuse day for them, you know, tuck it behind the wheelie bin for us, just to make sure that there's no or that any sort of potential for wind-blown items are reduced. That's the best we can do really at the moment. We do encourage, like I said, use of nets, but really it's around residents just being as responsible as they can, not putting out bins the night before on windy days, things like that, just general sort of good practice. I think that's the best that we can do really.
Do you know if there is any planned review in the future of the receptacle choice?
There is no planned review of the receptacle choice. I don't know if we're talking sort of wheelie bins here for recycling and things like that. So what I would say, if we're talking about that, then that goes against the Welsh Government's blueprint for recycling, and it would put Torfaen in a very sort of challenging. It would put Torfaen against the way that Welsh Government wants recycling collections to go. So Welsh Government do want us to use boxes. They do want us to what we call sort of source separate onto the back of the wagon, so you get that really good quality material recycling. But there is a danger of or a problem with sort of litter as part of those collections.
Thanks for that, Councillor Ian. Good question. Councillor Clarkson, would you like to come in?
Yes, please. 2 points. Initially, can we do more promotion and comms on encouraging people to crush their cans and their plastic bottles to just make sure there's more room in their black boxes, which again would hopefully help out with the problem of them being overloaded? That was the first question. And the second point was, I note Pembrokeshire, I've been reviewing how they do their collections, and they're offering a scheme where you can buy your own stackable 40 to 60 litre, recycling boxes. It's down to the individual if they want to buy them. They can still use the boxes, the bags, everything else as well. And it seems to separate out the waste. Would that be something we could look at to maybe offer to residents if they wanted to invest in that themselves? I think they're charging £50 for them as a one-off, and it just is collected curbside as all the rest of the rubbish is. But it separates the issue out and gives people the option if they'd rather a covered system and something that may be more stackable in their properties that looks a bit more attractive.
Both of those, Councillor Clarkson, really valid suggestions in terms of the promotion and communications around sort of crushing and squeezing bins and boxes. So we will be doing, because of Torvine's recycling rate, we will be doing a good amount of communications over the next 12 to 18 months. Most of those, what I will say is most of those communications will be around food waste, because that's somewhere where we need to perform better. But we absolutely certainly can have good practice, and it all goes to that piece that I was talking about a second ago, with you making sure your boxes in a sheltered place, making sure you're squashed and squeezed, sort of bins, containers are in there, which is absolutely fine. On the, call it additional capacity, stackable boxes, things like that, I'm very nervous of offering residents a sort of third way, sort of use your own box sort of thing. I'm not sure if that's what the suggestion was. What I can say at the moment is we're looking at options to increase capacity of receptacles at the curbside. So a really obvious one is we ask everything in one box. So could we maybe go with a 2 black box model, so that we ask for sort of cans of plastic in one and everything else in another box, for example. So these are just suggestions that we're looking at the moment. There's no firm plans or anything like that, but it is something we're cognizant on, and we do need to improve on.
Through the chair, could I just come back on that very briefly? It's not, Pembrokeshire not running own your own box scheme. It's a scheme that they're offering. If you go to their website and have a look at it, there's a lot of information about how they're offering that, and it just fits into their curbside. It just gives residents an extra option of how they want to present their recycling out for the operatives to collect. The residual waste doesn't change at all. It's just the recycling. It's just a suggestion.
Yeah,
I'll certainly have a look. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that, Councillor Clarkson. Councillor Ola, you wanted to come in with something?
Yeah, just quickly. Take on board what Councillor Clarkson said about stackable. I think stackable, especially in Blanavon and other areas like that, is very important, because the amount of recycled boxes out. Anthony, you talk about segregation between plastics and tin and everything else. I currently do that. I think it's really beneficial, because I think it aids the operative time. But one of my biggest gripes at the moment is that we have nets, and nets with small animals that tend to go into those boxes can get their heads stuck in them. Is there a way that we could offer a lid more so than a net? The reason there are animals that are getting heads caught in it, and we do hear people talking about this on a regular basis.
Could I just remind members, we're not...
Sure, I realise that.
We're not talking about recycling, we're supposed to be looking at tipping.
Okay, sorry, I'll take it down then.
Yeah. Thanks anyway for your thing, Nick. Councillor Ashley, would you like to come in?
Taking your last point there, the point about things coming out of boxes, the net, I agree with Nick about we had a hedgehog caught in the net. So, I mean, the other point is if you actually stack the boxes one on top of each other, that actually stops things flying out the top. So you just have one net on the top, which is an obvious thing, because you look at those boxes, they do stack like a Christmas tree, one round the other. I've long experience with them, funnily enough. The other thing that might want to look at, which I know you can get for those boxes, is actually a solid lid which goes on top. That was the other option other than nets, wasn't it? The other thing that strikes me was a series of hints. It could either go on the website about how to safely, as you said, put in things in various boxes as to stop them flying would be quite useful. I don't know if we do that. This is back to the adult education thing, putting tins in one box, glass in the other, so it doesn't go flying all over the place on windy days, which is part of the problem. Please help us. And a lot of people will. I'll leave it there, Chair.
Thank you for that, Stuart. If you'd like to do the next question then, Stuart, if you could do that, number 25, please.
Councillor Ashley, you're on mute if you're talking.
Objective 8, supporting community-based actions through volunteering. which I think we're all keen on. Question 25 is, do you carry out surveys with volunteers to assess whether there are any problems or any suggestions to improvement? It's the ask the customer question.
I don't know, Mark.
Is that Mark or
Yes,
Anthony?
yes. Well,
Simon, sorry.
I think I'll come back. I'll come in that, Councillor. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, go on, Mark.
But the straight answer is, to date, no. But I think it's something that we should be looking at.
Yeah, you got a lot of partners, because the number 2 question was, there's a hell of a lot of partners out there, and you're pushing an open door, I suspect.
Yeah. But I think the main thing for us is obviously we got the individual and groups, the local groups. I think they're the ones that we should be taking feedback off. So it's possibly something that well, it's not possibly, it is something that we will look at doing. When, I'm not quite sure, because I say schedules are very busy, and I keep on referring to him as the new litter and fly tipping prevention officer. His name is Oliver James. Yeah. Very approachable, so if there are any issues, please contact him. Yeah, so it's something that will be on Ollie's agenda. It's I think a survey is the way forward. So yes, it's not something we do now, but it is something we will be looking to do.
You're not having to do it with all your numerous jobs.
Anyway.
Yeah. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Stuart. If we move on to question 26, Councillor O'Connell, would you like to do that one, please?
Yep, if I can just get myself off mute. How do you ensure there's communication flow between the council and volunteer groups to ensure they have all they need, to encourage reporting the number of bags they collect, and to ensure there isn't duplication of work, such as the council and volunteer groups litter picking at the same time?
Who would like to answer that one?
Yeah, I'll come back on that.
Yeah, Mark.
Chair, yeah. Yeah, as I say, I think that's a good question, because communication is the key between individual volunteers and groups. So at the moment, as I say, when a national campaign comes in, for example, from Keep Wales Tidy, is something that we push that out through our social media avenues. Also, we have got a page on Facebook, our Cleaner and Greener volunteers. So that's something that we'd obviously, information is decanted through that as well. So those are the avenues that we have at the moment. Yeah, so that's what we do at the moment. If anybody can recommend how else we can actually get to these individuals and the groups, then we'll take that on board. And we say it's all about, at the end of it, I think we're doing things well at the moment, but there's always room for improvement. I think communication is one of the things that we could improve on. So any ideas or any suggestions are welcome. But as I say, the main platforms that we get information out at the moment is through social media, and where we attend events, community events. And obviously the big thing for us at the moment is the spring clean. So once we get our programme of events decided, that will be pushed out again through social media. So the feedback from the groups then and individuals is key. Yeah.
Can I make a suggestion there? Can you create some kind of almost a council or forum for volunteer groups to connect with each other, whether it's via email or WhatsApp or something, and then obviously you could dive into that and say when and where each organisation is litter picking. They're all registered. They're all the majority of them are registered and constituted. So to find a person or a point of contact in each shouldn't be too difficult. Yeah,
that's a great idea, Councillor. I think actually when Rosie Seaborn was in the post previously, when she first started, that was one of the main parts of her post. But obviously the post has developed on from there to be more of a litter and a fly tipping basis now. So I think it's something else we could introduce or reintroduce, because it's something we used to do before. I think it's a good point. I think it's a relevant point as well, that we should be looking to do that again.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that, Councillor Connell. Councillor Ashley, do you want a quick one? Because I am conscious of the time.
No, he's more or less answered question 27, and I was actually going to want to move it onto that because really I'm wondering, could I ask it and just make some observation? Yeah, question 27 and even 28 are more or less the same thing. How do you intend to support volunteers going forward, asking them to sign a contract with us, ensuring regulations are in place to support them? That was one of them. And then the other one, what are we going to do to praise or reward volunteers, encourage new volunteers to group us? And so you more or less answer both of those questions, Mark. What I was going to observe was that you got, and you know this from other quarters, that you got groups like TVA around the place and community councils all in similar business. And I'm wondering whether in partnership with them rather than go out alone, because I think Rosie Seaborn did quite a bit of this, that you've got a community network which you could actually work with, and I wonder whether you did that at any rate. That's the other part of the question we didn't ask.
Right, okay. So the first part of the question, all individual volunteers and groups as well are asked to complete a volunteer registration form.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's something that we do now. And what that does then, it covers the individual who signs up, is covered by council insurance. So as long as they as long as they litter picking on council land, then they're covered by the council insurance. So that's something that we insist on before we give any equipment or any litter bags out to individuals. So that's something that's already in place. Okay. And I'll be honest with you, the second part of the question has just gone completely out of my mind. Could you repeat, please?
In effect, you've got a health and safety contract in there with that.
Yes, yeah.
Because if they obviously are sharp, so it's a role, not a job description, because they're volunteers. And that's why I said the TVA do a lot of this, because they obviously are used to the role, and so the community councils and other organisations. The other part of this was the reward, because it's an intrinsic reward, not a wage reward. Where the community councils and the borough get involved in this, as you well know, with allotments, we reward people for doing these things because they go out there and do it in their own time. What Jason was also bringing up was actually getting people together so we don't get duplication. That was the other part of this. Yeah. You get people together, you can actually make sure that there are some lone recyclers which are difficult to sort of do, but that's the problem.
Yeah. As I say, and again, sorry I keep on referring back to Rosie's previous role when Rosie was in post.
Yeah.
But at the start, especially with groups, we did, I think it was 2019, we did hold a presentation evening where groups were rewarded for the positive impact on what they were doing. So again, that was something that was supposed to run every year, but unfortunately the dreaded COVID kicked in.
Yeah.
And so we couldn't run those, but obviously it's something that we could look at now, because at the end of the day, people give up their own time. So, you know, it's something, I think it's just a bit of appreciation of what people do. So how we show that as a council, how we show that appreciation. I think, you know, it's something that we need to restart, and maybe also look at, you know, individuals as well, because that was a group-based award. So this is individuals need to be encompassed in this as well.
I don't want to hog this, but would we partner up with TVA and people like that?
I think it's a great idea. Yeah, as I say, it's killing two birds with one stone, then I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah, great. Thanks for that, Stuart. Yeah. Councillor Clarkson, you wanted to come in?
Yeah, very briefly, a couple of observations in requests, Mark. The contract that people are being asked to sign at the moment, I've had 2 recent refusals because it scared them. Can we make it a bit more user-friendly, please? Also, the issue regarding they're only covered if they pick on council-owned land. That cuts out most of our boroughs. because it's now owned by the social landlords. As long as the litter is what we previously understood from Rosie was, as long as the litter was placed on council land, it would be collected. But, you know, it wouldn't be necessarily that it's got to be collected from council land. That covers a lot of private land as well, which nobody's looking after at the moment, and only litter picks are covering. So if we could clarify that, please. And praise and reward. Litter pickers need first aid training. They need some health and safety advice. When we sign them up, could we give them health and safety advice and maybe risk assessment templates that they can use with their groups so that everyone's, again, working under the same, there's issues, sharps, contaminated materials, traffic even. So if we could give them that information out and maybe give them a template towards helping themselves constitute or passing them to a group that can help them constitute. That could be Keep Wales Tidy or TVA. So they're the biggest rewards we can give people sometimes is training. And we can get that from places like Garnsuck and Partnership. It doesn't necessarily have to be done because they're just starting a volunteer training scheme. So maybe we can look at that.
Okay, yes, thank you, Lynn. Councillor Clarkson for that. Stuart, is there a legacy hand?
Very briefly.
Very briefly, because I'm conscious of the time.
Yeah, no, I am as well. Very briefly, want to reinforce what Linda said. Local partners like Garnsuck or CoStar or anybody like that, and your organisation, Chair, and also TVA carries all of this as a county voluntary. You might as well use it rather than reinvent it. Because you've got this poor fly tipping officer doing hundreds of jobs, and as TVA set up for it, it seems sensible.
Thank you, Stuart. It's a good suggestion anyway. Mark, you'd want to come back in for that?
Yes, it's just to say under the Carry Cymru project, we've had this. We've had a pot of money where we could use. So we have provided volunteers with health and safety training. It's something that we'd like to continue, but obviously looking at the information that we've been giving you, the Garnsuck and Partnership and TVA, if they're offering that facility, then obviously we can either work with them to provide further, or obviously we can ask them to train the volunteers themselves. But it is something we've done in the Carry Cymru project. Unfortunately, so it's going to be possibly going forward. It may be a resource issue there because obviously we're not quite sure where Keep Wales Tidy will be getting any funding from past March. So it's good to know that the Garnsuck and these two bodies are providing this training.
Thank you for that, Matt. If we move on to objective 9, which is an enforcement action. Councillor Hall, would you like to do question 29, please?
Sure. What integrated working opportunities have been identified between public protection and street scene teams since the introduction of the strategy, and what benefits have you seen as a result?
Who would like to lead on that one?
So I will bring Stephen in, but certainly it's the way it works at the moment in terms of securing incriminating evidence. It's Sian's excellent operatives that will be doing that and then passing it on to colleagues within public protection, so that they're trained to make sure that they know what to look for, how to sort of secure it, and what would be needed in terms of whether a photo of the incriminating evidence needs to be taken as part of the fly tipping, just to make sure that we can get the right enforcement action, the right prosecution action sort of down the line. But I'll bring in Stephen now, please.
Stephen, would you like to come in with that one? Yeah.
We work very closely with Sian and her team, and like Simon says, they report anything that's got incriminating evidence in it, and we do follow it up. Not to say that everything that we follow up gets to court, but we do take the appropriate enforcement action when Sian's team can provide evidence that we can follow up.
Yeah, excellent. Anybody else want to comment on that? Or...
Just to come back on it, what proportion actually goes through to court and actually gets prosecuted?
Let me see if I can take the figures out for the prosecutions. I can't give you a percentage because I don't have the figures in front of me of how many incidents get reported to Sian, but
In this financial year, we've had 3 successful prosecutions. We've got another one in court later on this month. 2 of those were for household duty of care. One was for fly tipping, and the one that's pending is for household duty of care. This is basically where people have just either passed their rubbish on to somebody else without making the appropriate checks, or we can't prove that they fly tipped it themselves, but the evidence in there is to show that it originated from them. So all of those have been reported by Sian's team, so we do follow those up. It's not always in the public interest to prosecute, in which case we can issue fixed penalty notices, or in very low level instances issue warning letters. Once we've issued a warning letter, the next stage for repeat offenders would be for us to take enforcement action. So sorry, I can't give you a percentage figure.
No, that's fine.
But yeah, you know, like I say, the prosecutions in the last year, we've had 3 successful and 1 pending.
Okay, thank you.
That's great. Thanks very much for that. Anyway, we next move on to the next part of this, which is funding, which is question 30. Councillor Thomas, like to do that one, please.
Thank you, Chair. What are the main financial burdens you have encountered or can see causing issues going forward? And how do we intend dealing with the burdens?
Who would like to lead on that?
A difficult one to judge. Really, to be fair, I'm sort of struggling because fly tipping littering is very much a sort of reactive service. We can do as much work as we can in terms of the litter strategy, and we are almost beholden to, as I said right at the start, is how much money people have got in their pockets. That will equate to littering. It will equate to fly tipping. GDP goes up, littering goes up. I can tell you a very strong indicator of recession is fly tipping. You see fly tipping drop down, pretty much you can guarantee that 3 to 6 months later we'll be sort of heading towards a recession or negative economic growth, or whatever you want to call it. So I'm just trying to give a sort of bit of context rather than trying to definitively answer the question. We live in a world of considerable sort of change and volatility, and it's very difficult to see what the kind of pressures will bring on the service and how we'll adapt to them. What I will say at the moment is we talked about Smash Glass and the kind of performance that we're getting at the moment. Just to reflect back that of all the local authorities that I work with, those street scene figures are the best I've ever worked with. So if we are going to have a spike in littering, if we are going to have a spike in fly tipping, we're in a really good place to sort of deal with that.
Okay,
thank you for that. Did you want to come back in, Councillor Thomas, with anything?
No, thank you, Chair. That's fine.
That's great. Thank you very much. Right, the very last question 31 is general. Councillor Parish, like to end on that one, please?
Yes, Chairman. How do you intend to measure the success of this strategy and its action plan going forward, as currently there doesn't seem to be much data to evidence its success or failure?
Yes, I would recommend to members and to council officers that the success is judged on the inputs of this and the degree of the inputs. So it's the school visits, it's the community groups, it's the volunteering, rather than looking specifically at sort of fly tipping and littering rates, for example. We may see littering and fly tipping go up, but that again will be down to the money in people's pockets. It's very difficult to judge. If we were doing nothing, for example, if we had no strategy, there's no way of sort of measuring what a do nothing example would be. So what I would recommend is, rather than look really hard at the kind of outcomes in littering, we look quite in a very focused way about all the activities that we're doing that we know will contribute to reduce littering and fly tipping, but we always have at the back of our mind the fact that we are beholden to finances, we're beholden to some macroeconomic factors that are beyond our control, and all we can do is reduce the peaks when they go up and take the enforcement action. We can make sure we got promotion and good awareness out there along the way. That would be sort of my recommendation.
Anybody else want to come in on that, or are you happy? Did you want to come up with a supplementary, Councillor Parry?
No, I think that's fine.
That's great. Well, thank you, everybody. There's
Thank
been
you,
a
guys.
tremendous amount of questions. Just to state the report was posted on social media as usual. There have been 5 emails and many comments from interested parties on Facebook. And these have been shared with all the members and with the relevant officers. And I'd like to thank Sian, Simon, Matt and Stephen for their contribution this morning and answering our questions. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We then move on to item 6, which is the next meeting. The items for next meeting.
Oh, Chair,
So-
we've got to do the recommendations first before that.
Should-
Yeah.
Shall
that's what I'm
officers
saying.
leave
That's
then?
all right.
You can leave.
I'm
Yeah,
trying to
yeah.
read 3
Thank you.
things.
You're getting a bit
I'm
closer.
saying I can't read everything. Look.
Right, nice to see you all. Thanks.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
sorry about that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thanks
Video,
all.
yeah.
I get a bit previous.
Yeah. I got 3 screens, 2 phones, and about 5 sheets of paper. So I got stuff everywhere.
Yeah, another feeling.
And I've written it down because my printer wouldn't do anything, and I've written it all squiggly look.
Ah,
But anyway, that was a tremendous amount of questions. I was more conscious because they were only supposed to be here till 12 o'clock. So I wanted to make sure we got in as much as we could. I wasn't being awkward. I was just trying to make sure that we got everything in as much as we could.
you did all right.
Yeah.
I can see Kath furiously scribbling there. Have you
Yeah,
got,
She was
have you
beaming
captured
away.
any recommendations?
She was
for us,
eating
Kath?
me, and I had everything going, everything lit up, and I'm thinking, where am I? What am I doing? I couldn't find that one, and I think, oh God.
It's hard
But
doing
anyway.
it on Teams,
Is
isn't
the,
it?
is the,
You know?
is the webcast stopped now?
It's very,
Sorry?
Is the webcast stopped?
No.
Okay.
it's very mentally challenging because you're trying to do so much in one hit, you know.
I know.
Yeah,
Do
but there we
you
are. We're
want
there
me
where we
then-
are.
Do you
So-
want me members to go through some of the things that I've marked down?
I
as
would say
could be
probably do that.
potential
Yeah.
recommendations? Okay.
Thank you, Kath.
And then once I've done that, if there's anything that you'd like to add that you feel I've missed,
Yeah.
we can go back over
Go
that
on that.
then. Okay, so quite early in the meeting, one of the things that Simon brought up around working with partners, etc., was doing some comms campaigns even with DIY organisations in the area, especially around bank holidays, etc., to advise residents on their responsibilities when disposing of any I don't know, furniture, etc., or whatever that they may change as a result of upgrading.
DIY rubbish is
DIY,
something we see
it's
a lot,
about
that
Type
type
of
of
thing,
thing.
yeah. And then leading on from that, so this could become one recommendation. There was reference to could we do more to make residents aware of their responsibilities? If they understood their responsibilities and the implications of that, then they might not use unlicensed waste removal services, etc. And again, then there was another thing that could all come into one around, is there a way of licensing waste disposal or removal services? And Simon said he would have to research into that, but it's all around the fact of the residents' responsibilities and those that are taking unscrupulous means to remove those things.
Through the chair, could I just come in on that?
Yeah, come on. Then,
Waste transfer licenses already exist. They're allocated through NRW. But currently you've got to go onto an NRW site, which is vast, to find out if the waste transfer operative that you're using is actually registered. Now, maybe there would be something we could put on Torvine's website that is a list of all the registered waste transfer operators just within Torvine.
Yep.
Which would make it a lot easier for people to actually find that information and, just making things more user-friendly. Because there already is a licence in operation. It's not the best because you apply for it online. There aren't many checks and balances against it. But if we could make it easier for people to recognise their licensed waste transfer operators. in Torvine, that would be great. I know I let people know who the ones in my ward are. And maybe that's something as councillors that we could do a bit more of. We all know they are the registered ones. The ones that people use from outside of the area off Facebook is where it gets a little bit more problematic. But if people were using our local businesses more because they were aware of them, it might cut down on that traffic from out of the borough. Shop local.
If you look at the, all I was going to say, Steve, Linda, you're totally right with that. But if you look at the Scrappy scheme, they're very heavily licensed,
regulated,
and they regulated. They've got that little thing on the windows, so you know if you get a flyby. In fact, they've almost eliminated them because of the scheme they've got. That's what I'd like to see.
They should be showing their waste transfer licences when they collect your waste, Stuart. It's just people don't know to ask for them. All licensed waste transfer operators have that with a photo of themselves. It's not just the scrappies, as we affectionately term them. Because we've only got 7 actually registered scrappies in Torvine, but we've got a lot of waste transfer operatives.
But let's put it this way: the scrap merchants have a very different. It seems to have a different scheme.
The difficulty with scraps, dude, I think, is you've got to weigh it in. So there's a check and balance at that side as well. When you weigh it in, you've got to show your licence and you've got to receipt it.
Can you make a recommendation around that, Kath, of some sort?
I think it's a really what the success of that particular scheme has meant. The guys themselves police it to some extent. I think what's happening. They're very responsible about it.
Thanks, Stuart.
Can you work that in, Catherine, for me?
I think she scribbles down when you don't realise she's looking.
No, she's good at that.
Do you want to come in?
I just want to go back to the Cass question about the comms going out and saying about recycling. Isn't there an effort? Isn't there a side of this about the penalties that you're going to get on if you go out and do what you do? But there's the other side of this is how much at the same time could it be actioned that where they can remove their recycling, so how they recycle it, the effort of going, instead of dumping it on the ground, you can take it to New Inn. Is there an emphasis of actually highlighting about the recycling centres that we've already got? And also the fact that if you can't get to a recycling centre, there is a service that there is currently available through the county council, so you don't have to fly tip. So this is about education, about not to fly tip, but this is how you get rid of your fly tip, not to fly tip, but this is the ways that you go through the scheme to not fly tip. So you use the recycled bins, or you know what I mean? It's just the educational side of it. They're not talking about it. They're not actually saying.
Well, what I've put down. I've got to obviously pull all of this together.
Yeah,
One of the bullet points that I've included already as a result of the conversations is signposting, and as part of that promotion is signposting to say these are your responsibilities, these are the implications if you don't take those on board, and this is how we can make it easier for you, something along those lines.
That's great.
And I'll pull something together to encompass that, and then you can sign it off when I send it out to you.
Okay, great.
That's brilliant. Lynn, did you want to come in?
Yeah, I'm really sorry, Chair. I've got to be somewhere in 20 minutes and I've got a 15-minute drive.
Yeah, no, get them out now.
The only thing I wanted to just make sure was in there, if everybody agreed, is the comment or the suggestion I made about officers working with a cross-section of businesses to discuss litter and everything. Now, the only thing I'd like to pick up is that he said that would be okay. They could work with breakfast groups, etc. I'd like it not to be restricted to just those, because they're the only ones that ever get contacted by the council. So I'd prefer it if it was not just restricted to the channels that we already use.
All groups,
as a business owner, that this, I've had no information from the council about this whatsoever. And so there are masses of businesses out there that are not included in the Breakfast Club, that have only got a membership of about 50 when you think of the hundreds of businesses in Torfaen. So I'd like this to not just be restricted, to go outside of the usual box of consultees.
Yeah, I think we all agree with that one, Liz.
No,
Thank you. I know that Catherine will send out a list of these, so I'll have a quick run through those later and if I've got any comments, I'll reply to all, but I'm pretty sure we're all singing from the same page here, so I'm sure it's all right. Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you, everybody, but I've got to run.
Thanks, Councillor Higgins. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye then. Ta-ra.
You
Councillor
got any
Parish,
more,
I think you're-
Catherine?
I have. I'm just
Councillor
jotting
Parish,
that
you're
down a
next.
second. Okay, anyone else need to come in
Chair.
before I move on?
Go on then.
Oh.
Yeah, when
Yes,
they
please.
were answering objective 1, they did mention funding. You know, they'd like more operatives or more staff. Are we allowed to put that into a recommendation? Because I know
You're
it's hard
antagonising
for
them
them.
now, Norma.
Well,
I just think
yeah.
all teams would like more funding or more
Yes,
staff, and I mean they
yeah.
work through their medium-term financial plan as a
Yeah.
regular occurrence. So, you know, I'm not sure the benefit that
Okay.
would entirely up to you, of course, but
You wouldn't be on their Christmas card list.
We did ask them to identify any financial barriers, didn't we? But that was their opportunity to come up with that, but they
and they
didn't.
didn't, did
When,
they?
but when we talked about partnership
sure,
working, we were talking internal and external partnership working, and that I found interesting because they were missing the blessed trick. I wasn't convinced about that.
Yeah, that's another recommendation. Isn't
Yeah.
it?
Councillor
Yeah.
Thomas, you wanted to come in. Are you all right with that, Norma?
Yeah, that's
yeah.
okay. Yeah, and I thought as he brought it up at that point, you
Yeah.
know, but
I see him worried a couple of times when you ask him questions.
You're very worrying, Norma.
Collect,
Thank you,
you go
Chair.
there.
I'd just like to explore the possibility of looking at the smart bins and the multi-use bins again. I
Yeah.
know she said they had trialled it, but I would like us to look at it again
Not very
and maybe
convincing,
look
was
at
it?
perhaps a concentrated area, perhaps either a ward as a pilot or
Yeah.
perhaps the boating lake or park, and look at it. I mean, surely if we were sort of encouraging people to recycle in the bin, wouldn't it help our recycling targets as well?
Because she was on about the
you
cost
know.
of it, wasn't she? Yeah.
Yeah, but we could do a pilot. I mean,
Yeah,
surely it would be invest to save if we could find any savings. And the smart bins, couldn't we look at those as well?
Yeah.
Where she said about, you know, they would compress the rubbish in there. Well, surely that would help with collections. They could, you know, perhaps wouldn't need to collect from them quite so often. So
They are hugely expensive things.
That's right. Yeah, I agree.
the multi-use bins, I think if we done an invest to save project and see how it could go.
Yeah, the multi-use, definitely.
Kathy, do you want to come back in before I go to Nick?
Yes, please. Only to say to Councillor Thomas, it might be worth us referencing the recommendation made in the September 2020
Absolutely,
meeting,
that's what I was looking at.
and
Yeah.
refer back to that again, because although there are things that they have done within that, they were the numbering things that they talked about again, so they hadn't considered the whole thing. So if
No.
I reference the recommendation made saying that you would like further investigation into that at this point,
And a
I think that
pilot,
would
yeah.
cover all of that then and add to it that once they've considered, could they look at, you know, introducing via a pilot scheme?
An invest to save possibility.
Yeah, you know, I think that would cover it and raise the point that this has been raised before by the committee. Yeah.
And it's a valid point.
Thank
isn't
you.
it, know? Yeah.
In a suitable hotspot where it's relevant, not a quiet place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or a ward pilot somewhere.
Yeah.
Both is the ideal one, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Nick, you want to come in?
Yeah, just on objective 8, I don't know if you're aware, but David Leach is working within communities to embed
we are.
communities together. He's trying to merge communities together and get all the volunteers together to do certain objectives. Maybe we should be asking for a recommendation to get David Leach involved with this part of it, because of obviously he's coordinating stuff like this right now. At the moment we have a street clean. Councillor Liam Cowles is now organising a volunteer clean up in the town that's going through David Leach through the TVA. Could we could there be more communication with David Leach regarding this?
That was
I've been pestering him for months.
That was what.
Yeah, but that was
behind my
quite
question.
Useful. You know, he's coordinating the communities around, and we're talking about all these issues about different groups and everything else. Maybe that's in his portfolio more so than anywhere else. And if he's involved, that might be useful.
Yeah,
that was
valid
Nick,
point, Nick. Yeah.
Nick, that was behind my question, because when I asked them about partnership working in the council, did they communicate? I wasn't convinced. That's a good question, actually.
Yeah, but then he's communicating with town councils. He's communicating with all other groups.
We know that.
So surely he's the lead on this to be able to move this forward.
I don't think anybody's leading on this. This is what I was worried about.
And regarding to businesses, you know, that's another thing that, you know, David Leach is trying to get communities to gel together. Surely that's under, to me, it's just under David Leach. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's all of us.
Give him more work.
So,
no, you're right. You could give him more work.
How have you written that down, Kath?
Does that make sense, Kath?
It does indeed.
You know what I mean? Because he's communities, and we're talking about supporting the community actions. So surely that should be. Yeah.
Okay, so I've said greater joint working between directorates to improve support to volunteers and encourage greater community involvement.
Yeah. No, that's a brilliant one, Nick.
Okay, thank you.
Lynn, did you want to come in? I know she would be an actor.
I'm just wondering if Kath wants to go through the recommendations she's already captured first. I do want to come in, but it's just we've gone back into that.
Yeah, that's a fair point. If you do everything you got,
she might have already captured what I want to suggest. So
I'll
leave my hand up, but maybe Kath can go through her recommendations first.
I'm happy to do. I'm happy to do the same thing as well, because I want to hear what you got, Kath.
Okay.
Each objective
It'd be nice to hear Kath talking.
I said each objective in turn.
I tried to do it in the order that things were said. So I may not necessarily raise the objective heading at this point. I will when I write them out, obviously, but I've just done it in my note format. So I'm going to go back now to where I left off. We talked around businesses who encourage sort of bring your own and less use of polystyrene and things like that. Simon talked about the deposit return scheme that isn't being introduced until 2025. But he said that if there are businesses that are supporting bring your own, then more could be done to support this. And maybe we could pilot some support with some interested businesses, if that was something we can consider. So I didn't know whether or not you wanted to bring that forward.
That was one of my recommendations, so thank you, Kath.
Okay. And then the next one, Councillor Haynes picked up, was working with the cross-reference of businesses to engage with them in the future. And I'll obviously bring in the fact that she said rather than just the normal consultees, a wider engagement. So I've got that. Then when we talked about volunteers, we asked about whether or not they survey them. And I think it's they were like, no, we don't, but we should. So I think a recommendation would be to carry out, say an annual survey of volunteers to check that they've got everything that they need, and also if they've got any suggestions for improvement, because at the moment it doesn't seem to be that two-way conversation.
Through the chair, could I come in on that? That was something that Rosie used to do. We used to meet on a weekend. She'd organise it, and we'd usually meet at Pontypool Active Living Centre. And these are the discussions we've had, but it seems an ideal time with us having a new officer that's going to coordinate that role. And we could invite some partners as well. Keep Wales Tidy, I'm sure Tom Board would be happy to attend. I know Flight Saving Wales would come if we invited them. And maybe have a face-to-face meeting where we send out to all the groups that we've got an invitation. I can guarantee that not all of them will turn up, and you may get one representative from a larger group, usually the chair. And then we could have that conversation face to face and build some relationships as well.
Have you got the separate point that was made in the partnership bit, which I did make, about the organisations out there, partner organisations, which goes alongside this?
Yeah.
Well, it's sort of a separate recommendation. I've got that down as Stuart, that we build stronger relationships with.
If we were doing this point by point, that should have been under the partnership one.
Yeah.
As you wish.
Yeah. No, I agree with you.
Yeah. Go on,
So
let
do you want-
Kath go on then.
to say what
Otherwise
you-
we deviate again.
Mark did say he was going to come back to us with that one.
Well, if I go through the ones I've got,
Yeah,
and then when we come to the
Okay,
if there's anything else-
I didn't want to lose it. That's the
No,
only bit.
that's fine. And if Councillor Clarkson's got it down as well, one
Yeah.
of you can bring it to me.
We're
I'll put that
triangulating
in.
it.
And then when I put it into the pro forma, it'll come under the headings. It'll be under the relevant headings.
Well,
Okay,
can we
so
do it
even
now?
though I might not have that down, you can bring it up when I've got to the end of mine.
Okay.
Yeah? Okay. And then moving on from survey, carrying out surveys with our volunteers, and I've added your previous comments. We also looked at consider introducing a forum so groups can communicate, and the council can also add to this so that they're information sharing, awareness sharing, and again, avoiding the duplication. So yeah, you happy with that one?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Then I think overall there was a number of comments then that were raised around volunteers and engaging with them at that early process. And there were things around can forms be more user friendly, more definition of what is required by only collecting on council land, because that is restrictive.
That's nonsense.
Then there were things around health and safety advice as part of the registration and signposting to where else that is available.
TVA and keep Wales tidy.
It's keep Wales tidy. It is. TVA don't have the expertise on fly tipping and litter.
But they do the general volunteering thing. Use what's available in the community was the point.
I've tried them before, Stuart. They didn't. I had to take it to TVA. I had to take it to Keep Wales Tidy. Tom is fantastic. He's great.
I know Tom's good, but it's just a bit about recruiting volunteers into the process, which is the other bit.
That's another we're going to crisscross again. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. No. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So it's about pulling something together. One particular recommendation there around providing something that is more user-friendly for people who are considering being volunteers and then providing them with the support that they need throughout. So I'll put a show of words together for that again for you to sign off. So they are the recommendations I've got. And I'm aware that you've obviously got others. So over to you now to add to that.
Yeah, can I come in with the one about the organisation, the partner organisations, which I thought they were a bit, they weren't aware, they kind of lost that. I imagine Rosie Seaborn had all that lot in her head, mate. We need, and Mark said he was going to map that lot.
Yeah, he said about the database, didn't he?
Yes.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of them out there. I mean, like the canal people, like that, and it goes back to what Nick was saying about Dave Leach and his involvement. So somebody, but at this level, it probably isn't Dave Leach because he's head of service.
Yeah. So how would you frame that one, Kath?
So I got stronger working relationships required with our partners.
Yeah,
that's that's internal and external. Be honest.
Okay.
That bit I didn't think about, but that the council should be as savvy as it as well.
Yeah, that's fine. I've got that. Okay, next.
Lynn, you want to come in?
Yeah, I think we've got a blockage where we're not separating out some of the litter that's picked up.
Yeah.
And it goes in with the bin issue as well, is we're not separating out the bins.
Yeah.
So if we need to look at that further, we need to come up with some innovative ways. Maybe talk to the volunteers about how they could do it. It might be different coloured bags.
Yeah, I've got something down. Look at ways of being able to sort waste from litter picks.
When a vehicle comes back in, they do some, but it's only limited.
Yeah, but why is it only limited, Steve? If it's not suitable 1 minute, then it's not. It's either not suitable or it is doable.
Yeah,
so, but we need. I would suggest that 90% of what we litter pick is recyclable.
Yes.
It's tins, it's plastic, it's high value sometimes. Because I've been approached by scrappies as we affectionately call them at the moment,
Just
asking me if they can go
scrapping.
through my litter picking before I get it collected, because they can take all the aluminium cans out.
Yeah, I've got that.
Yeah. Okay with that?
But they've got
Dr.
two colour
Parish, you
bags
wanna come
already,
in?
haven't they? They've
Yeah,
got a
go
green
on,
bag and a red bag.
No,
If the-
that's Keep Wales Tidy and Torvine.
Is
Yeah,
it?
that's
Okay,
Two
so
different organisations.
okay,
No,
so if there
Norma,
was one
did you
bag,
wanna come
if
in?
they were collecting, if the liquor pickers were picking up recycling in one bag and had another bag for the other, would that be easier or not? Or was that
It wouldn't be easier. Some litter pickers already do it, Nick.
okay?
I used to bring it home and try and separate it out. Like I
Separate it.
said, one of our local scrap people used to take all the aluminium cans off me, because there's value in it, and they used to be able to
Okay.
weigh that in. So there must be ways, if we look at it, there must be ways that we
There
can
must be innovative
facilitate
ways
this.
to look at it, yeah.
Yeah.
So, it's not just we're doing what's easiest, we're doing what's best.
Yes, which would actually get it better. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Sorry,
that would
Norm,
be
do you wanna
talking
come
to
in now?
volunteers as well to see what they can come up with.
All right.
Right.
Come in,
Right.
come in,
Thank
Norma,
you.
now, sorry.
Right, thank you, Chair. I was wondering about the educating children one. Only two schools out of 32. Now,
That's
there is an
terrible.
officer who has that job, but 32 schools, I mean, that's a huge task. And should we have somebody dedicated to that?
We have. The thing is then, again, not working together. In the waste department, they've got a schools officer, and what's not happening, and they're not talking to each other. It comes back to this talking to. Plus the fact you've got.
Can I?
Yeah.
Can I just say that we need to put in, that it's so important that the schools are visited, and, we'll just put it down like that. I think.
This is our future generations.
We could add to that.
Yeah.
I asked that question, didn't I? And
Yeah,
I basically said, was there a way of actually promoting the two schools within the other, promoting to make it better? Would that help?
Yeah, well,
so would that help? Using those examples to be able to promote those other schools. Could we do that? And
enough, yeah.
I don't think they. I said about the Cwmbran environmental quiz, and I think the other community councils, some of them do it as well. They didn't seem to.
Yeah.
They all do it, yeah. But we've been doing 20 odd years, yeah. But it does seem they don't think across the. They don't think they're not across the piece on this.
And would you question that as a recommendation, Kath?
What I'm trying to get in my head, and trying to put it down, but I haven't got there yet. Starting with Councillor Parish's comments about how important it is that schools are visited, and in order to promote awareness. And then I've said, can there be cross-working between teams within one department, i.e. the schools officer that sits within the waste team. So when they're going and talking about waste, they talk about litter in, as a partnership. It's not as two separate entities. Also then, the comments that Councillor Haller has made, that if we can promote those schools that are involved, to try and get others involved as well. So put one recommendation around how we liaise with our education
how to promote and how to deal with it.
Yeah.
Can I go to the point that the schools primary schools particularly, are aware of it because they do environmental quizzes and they're really good at it. It's just they're not being connected with.
Norman, did you want to come back in then with that?
No,
you come back up again
to get rid of my hand and it won't go.
I see.
The only thing I would have missed, you got a sticky hand, you have.
You've got a very sticky hand. No answer to that.
The only thing I was concerned of with working with local businesses, question 10, where we were on about non-domestic recycling. He was very vague with that, with the new legislation coming in, the Welsh Government.
I suppose the legislation hasn't come in yet, so until they know what that is.
He didn't say what practicality, what they were going to do and what it entailed. He wasn't very descriptive.
And I think that's because the legislation hasn't come out, so until it has, they haven't got in front of them what it is that they have to do.
I didn't know whether there are any pre-guidelines. That's what I was trying to find.
Yeah. Well, it's not until the autumn, is it? So it's quite early yet, I suppose. For
just so we knew what the strategy was to encompass with what we're doing. That was all. Yeah, fine. Nick, did you want to come back in because you got your hand up?
No, so my hand is not up. Sorry,
sticky,
I
is it?
have a problem with my hand on this machine.
Andy.
It doesn't
There's no
want
answer
to
to
go
that.
down.
In then.
Down, hand. Down. Stay.
Linda, do you want to come back in?
Yes, please. What does everyone think about putting a recommendation to firm up this assurance they've given us about improving comms?
Yeah.
And
It's essential.
you know,
It's essential.
I totally agree. I think the situation on every single question we've asked now is about communication. It's all about communication.
Could we capture that and maybe make some specific issues within that about residents' responsibility and you know, asking people to crush their cans and bottles?
And I've got that down where they talked about over the next. Well,
Right.
they mentioned, and I wrote this down, over the next 12 to 18 months, they are going to be carrying out a large communication campaign. And what they said is what we were talking about with crushing cans, etc., was one of the issues would be to promote good practice, etc. So if we emphasise that and bring that in as a recommendation.
I think if people were aware that they were risking a fine for not using a registered waste transfer operator, that would change behaviour massively.
I think we need to make people aware that if we don't reach our recycling targets, how much, it's going to cost.
Yeah, we've got to be careful there, though, Chair, because that's about recycling,
we're not
and
talking,
this is about
we're not
litter,
talking
so
about
we're
that.
not
But
talking evil.
what I'm trying to do with the communication, I'm just trying to make people aware that this fly tipping has an impact on another part.
Yeah, I
Not
agree.
just
Yeah.
that.
So
Right,
that would be one of the bullet points then.
Yeah.
I've got a completely different thing which we did talk about, and I thought was a bit lukewarm. The answer. I've got my hand up, by the way, Chair.
Yeah, go on. I'm sorry.
Go on,
There's hands up everywhere.
No, there's not. Right. Well, I did have a conversation about the cost of bins and sponsorship, and I think we need to slightly revisit that one. I think we should encourage businesses and not-for-profits, where they're appropriate, to sponsor bins and awareness campaigns. Notice I'm coming a bit on the around their own local premises. I do support Liz on that one, and where possible they can sponsor. You don't necessarily have to sponsor a bin, 400 quid a piece, but I think and awareness campaigns as well. We've got a lot of hubs around the place. And make opportunities. I just thought they were a little bit lukewarm on that one.
So what are you saying then? To encourage businesses more in relation to sponsorship?
Notice the word not-for-profit. That brings in community councils, voluntary organisations, et al. Because they're quite capable. We're quite happy to fund up things like this. And I think there's a little the effort to do it is a little bit, So we actually put that in as a recommendation. They can then go out and sponsor their roundabouts, bits of land, and all the rest of it. It's not just about, and it's about fly tipping and litter, because I think we're quite happy to say they take this bit of land, clean it up, and make sure it's all that stuff. Are you all right with that, Linda? Yeah. Linda?
Yes, I'm here.
Are you okay with that idea about the money going back in again?
Are we all okay with it?
Yeah,
that's fine then.
Before I come to you, Linda, Jason hasn't said anything. So,
where is he?
Have you got any recommendations you want to say in? Which is unusual to get a word in with you, bloody lot.
Jason's quite capable of doing that.
Jason, is there anything you want to
say? Nothing in terms of recommendations. Two observations, I suppose. The first point I made right at the beginning was on the data that he presented, only being from 2021. I would like to see that go back, because I do think there'll be a correlation between how making waste harder to dispose of at the recycling centre has increased fly tipping. So it'll be interesting to see that. And I think he's trying to pull a bit of a fast one there by only showing it from 21. The second one, again, just an observation, no real recommendation, and that's the suggestion of using Kingdom to enforce centre shiver down my spine. I think we should put a stop to that as soon as this even uttered.
You saw my reaction, Jason. You saw my reaction.
I think that's gone through council, and that's why we've got our own enforcement officers.
And he did say that it isn't something he was putting forward.
I think this is new senior officer issue coming in from outside.
Maybe they've done it in Bristol or something.
It's a road well travelled, isn't it, Jason?
Yeah.
Can we make a recommendation that any form of enforcement is done in house, as any brought in has been?
How about a comment to say that you support that any enforcement is currently carried out in house?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's succinct. Thank you very much, Kath.
Better wording for that, Kath.
I think you might have saw my face when you mentioned the word kingdom. They spent half their time going around finding young men for throwing butts in hedges.
Don't go down there. We're lucky, you know. You don't.
Yeah, that's it for me.
I'm not saying good. Yeah.
Okay, so is that everything now? Is there anything
No,
else?
I've got
Did
two
you want to
more.
come back in?
Sorry, Councillor
Come on
Clarkson.
then. Come on.
Litter zones, businesses.
Go on.
The discussion we had around that we support them contacting head offices of the main franchises and large, but the smaller businesses, if we can sort of contact them and look at setting up litter zones around their premises with this offer of collecting rubbish that is truly litter picked.
So this refers back to, and I didn't know whether to raise this or not, but now you've brought it up. This is around the comment that Sian made around Tidy Shoppers Code.
That's it,
Yeah. So she said that it used to be in place many years ago, but we need to evidence that the litter they collect is in the immediate vicinity of their shop and not business waste. And that if that was the case, it could be collected as part of the community litter pick. And they did say that they could convey to the businesses that they engage to. So do you want to say something along the lines of reinstating the Tidy Shoppers Code? Would that be something that would cover it?
Yeah, I think so, please.
Yeah, the other thing that nobody mentioned is about...
I haven't finished yet.
Oh, sorry.
Go on.
Putting signage up with that. There don't seem to be a lot of signage, you know, please be respectful, put your litter in the bin. I mean, simple things like that.
People don't see signs, and we've also got a street policy. You'll get reminded every time you ask for a new sign that we've got a street policy about not overusing signs. It's linking up all the policies.
Yeah, but in strategic hotspots, it would be more beneficial.
I think that great big bin.
I've asked Sean for those for Blind Avon, and she's actually said we can have some on our bins eventually.
Yeah.
But the thing that came out of that question about the bins was the policy that Sean was mentioning about the barcoding. I thought that was really useful.
Yeah.
I thought that was because that will actually demonstrate what bins are actually being fly tipped, and that will also demonstrate quicker where the actions need to be taken place. So that was a really good. That was a really good. Yeah, when they've been emptied, they're going to be monitored on what's happening on them.
Yeah.
A lot of bins are fly tipped, and if the information is going back quicker, then there's going to be action around those bins quicker, which are really good positive. And to me, that's something for Sean to move forward, and I welcome that open arms because it's going to be very useful.
I've got one more recommendation.
Well, I'm just saying, go for it, Linda. You've got a long list, Lynn.
I don't know whether you want to add this to your bullet points, Kath, but I feel that it's a merits on its own, is that we start pushing self-reporting of litter for residents so that we can get the evidence of the hotspots and empower people.
Naming and shaming.
I'm not into that. I've actually recruited quite a few litter pickers when they've contacted me about litter hotspots and what they can do about it. So there seems to be a whole campaign we could do around that with encouraging people to self-report on lots of items, really, not just...
Linda, if you look at that, when we asked that question, how much waste left over after collection is reported and how much is collected as a result of inspections? So,
well, this is why I'm trying to put it into a recommendation, I think, Steve. So it's something along the lines of, a campaign to inform people how to self-report.
Yeah.
Added on to that, how they can get involved in community volunteering and litter picking and, contact information, keep us tidy.
We've got another one around, encouraging more volunteers. So what I don't want to do is weaken what you're trying to say by merging it with that one, but then do we need to
both out self-reporting
as one and the other sits within the encouraging? Yeah,
You
that's
know, the
yeah.
self-reporting.
I'd be happy with that, Kath.
Could we ask if they got any data for the self-reporting and for the inspections? Because I think if you remember right, there was a vague answer came from him from that, didn't it?
If we look
When
at the
somebody
report,
to ask him what data they had about the ones that the people are self-reporting and what they're doing through inspections. If he said he'd have to have a good look, wouldn't he?
What inspections do you mean, Steve? I'm a bit unsure what you mean.
Well, the inspections, sometimes they go around looking weekly with the bins to see if they're full. That's what they tend to do. They'll have a routine route, the inspection, when they're doing a litter pick. So
I thought that was just the guy that empties the bin picked at that.
no, not always. Sometimes,
That's
if
monitoring.
one's got an overflow and they tend to, like Nick has said before, they tend to go there more often. So
I think the operatives feed into that, don't they?
Yeah, but what would you be asking for there, Chair? I'm not quite sure what you'd be asking
I'm a
for.
bit confused.
Yeah, but when that question was raised, they asked him by people reporting litter picking and everything. What figures do they have for the data that how many people are
I
reporting?
don't think they had the data though, and that
No.
was why.
Well, he was a bit sceptical. He wasn't sure of what the answer he was going to try and give. So I didn't know whether there is any information we could get from that, or is it just something they don't keep?
How could we make a recommendation out
It's
of it,
almost
though,
more
Steve?
you're asking a question by asking them.
Well, no, the recommendation is how often do bins get emptied on complaints from the public?
But that's a question you've
That's
already
a
just
question,
asked.
not a recommendation.
Well, I would recommend it knowing about the data, because three people can phone up about a bin.
Can I suggest
don't
that
know.
is that the last question?
Guys,
that
I'm going to
Norma
have to go
raised?
because I've got another meeting outside in the shop.
Yeah.
Bye.
I got one or two with ethics. Go on.
Yeah.
Oh, I've got a meeting with the post office, so.
Okay.
Bye.
Nice to see you.
See you soon.
No, that's fine. But I just thought
Could I
normally
suggest
we'd
we
ask for
make that
strategic data. Yeah.
on the back of the question that Norma asked about evidence-based?
Yeah.
That maybe that would, that we try and, I know he was saying that it's a difficult thing to do, but could we word it that we have to have some sort of way of evaluating from the subjective information that he's talked about to be objective about improving things going forward? I know he was saying it's sort of economically biased sometimes, but I've seen a drop in fly tipping in my area since we've been in with cost of living crisis, which is ever so strange. It doesn't seem to follow the lines of what he was saying.
Yeah, but we got no stats, do we? So.
Can you see what I'm saying about that? Whether we can pull something more objective out of all of this subjectivity, so that we've got a benchmark to see that improvements have actually been made, and that might be something. Self-reporting might come into that. How often we have to go back?
Trying to get across, Linda.
How often we have
we
to
got
go
no
back
statistics to work from.
It's still a data question, isn't it?
Does that make a recommendation, Kath?
Yeah, I'm saying something along the lines of consider introducing more reporting of data in order to set benchmarks and set targets for the future.
It's the old data question, isn't it?
I don't know whether data's going to capture it, Kath.
Yeah,
I think this is more taking the subjective information that you've got, that he's given us today and told us is the difficulty in gathering data, but making some sort of objectivity out of that. That so that you can sort of.
The data that I would be asking, how many bins you got in Torvine, how many times you're emptied, and what's emptied out of them in Wakeway.
Well, we know that. Sounds
I know, but
she told us today.
But
she told
the
us
recommendation
550.
is, how would he look to improve it?
But that's a question.
Yeah, well.
Yeah.
I'm struggling with this one. I'm not sure
benchmarks. We need to be able to demonstrate that we've made an improvement going forward. So how do we, from this information, how do we set aims, objectives? I don't know what the word is. I'm struggling with my brain at the moment because there's too much noise going on in the room.
Sean said it when she had the guy from the information that Sian's gathered from her team, can they furnish us with information as simple as that?
We need to be able to see that there are improvements going
Yeah,
forward.
I
So
believe
can
it.
the officers look at how they can achieve that?
Okay, so
Does that help,
ways
Kath?
of demonstrating
Isn't it a
improvement
mapping
going forward.
exercise?
No,
It's not a mapping exercise.
no,
It's more than that, isn't it?
it's more than that. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's bigger than that.
It's mapping data and improvement from
It
an
is.
benchmarking is the word I'm thinking of. You said it earlier, didn't you? It's not that either, is it?
So
So you question it as a
I mean,
recommendation.
Kath, what have you
That's the
got?
difficult part.
What have you got, Kath?
Consider ways of
Reporting.
demonstrating improvement going forward.
Well done, Kath.
So
you've
that
done
when
it.
we get the
That's probably
next
easier.
iteration, progress iteration of this, we can
Because
see
it's that,
some physical change.
yeah.
No, that's more. We've gone all
We
around the
need
ball
some.
because we've
We
done it
need
in a
some
couple
way
of
of
words.
measuring the improvement. So
Yeah.
can officers look to how they can achieve that going forward? Yeah, I'm happy with that, Kath. Send it out. We'll send comments in via email.
Yeah, no worries.
We get there in the end.
God, you do, don't you, Linda? Thank you.
But sometimes it's there and you don't know how to interpret it out.
They use the word review here.
That's not good enough for review.
No, it's not. It's
No,
not. It's too easily got round, isn't it? Is what you're saying.
Review is a slack word for not doing a lot.
So I've just put now.
Anything else?
Consider ways of demonstrating improvement going forward. So the
Thank
next
you.
progress update can show progress of your actions.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I'll have a think about it, Kath. Maybe
Yeah,
send
if you
an
come up with
email.
something else,
It
let me
takes a
know.
scrutiny officer
That
to
doesn't
come
so
up
bad.
with
We don't know
that.
how to get out.
I come up with perfect words.
Anybody
out.
got anything else you want?
No, I think I'm losing the wheels of live.
Linda, Norma, you got anything else you want to add?
No, I want a cup
Glenn?
of coffee now, please.
I can't.
No,
think of
thanks,
anything.
Kath. You've been very patient.
Yeah, you have.
Well.
We get there in the end. Jason,
Thank
you
you,
got anything
Kath.
you want to add? No?
No, I'm good. Thank you very much.
Okay, then members, well, as per normal, what I'll do is try and pull these now into a pro forma that you can go through yourselves. And if there is anything then that you think can better, strengthen those further, then you can come back to me on that.
Thank
Well
you.
done, Kath.
Thank you, Kath.
you've
Much
done well.
appreciated.
We've still got to do
Bye
items,
And
next
item
item yet,
6
so
is
don't
that
run off.
before we go.
Thanks,
Item
Nigel.
6 is
You're not
Yeah, we haven't
excused
given
yet.
up the will.
right. The basket of items is executive forward plan, and then it's any other audit referral. So
Oh, blimey.
Have we had a couple of things referred in, Kath? I think, haven't we?
Yeah, so the items that we've got left in the basket, I'm just trying to find those, so bear with me because they're right at the
Baskets.
Yeah. So anything that was referred in to us by members of the public during visioning, anything that was taken on board, that sits in the basket. And if anything comes in from Audit Wales, we bring that to you each meeting. If there's anything, there isn't anything at the moment.
Oh, good.
So the basket of items that are left that you chose during visioning has got a number of things in there, but I took it upon myself to speak to the chief officer prior to the meeting to see if she could give her advice on which out of those things are the larger priority for her. And she would suggest that for the April meeting, we look at the active travel, so changing behaviours to encourage transition from car to active travel. That's also on the executive member forward plan, due to go to cabinet with suggestions in June. So it would be timely for you to look at this at this point.
Yeah.
That's the advice they've given. If you're happy with that, that's what
Can
we'll
I
take to
ask
the next
about where
meeting.
we are with weed management?
Yes, you can. So
Somewhere.
Cardiff have now carried out their scrutiny, and a report has gone to cabinet. That was the thing that was holding us back. If you recall, until they had made their report public, we weren't in a position to deal with it. That is public now. However, as a result of the time that has taken, what we have had to do as a council is extend our current contract with the supplier that we use for an additional year, because we couldn't do it prior, which was our plan. If you recall, we were going to try and have the meeting in September. Then we tried November. We didn't have the option of that. By this point, it is now too late because we've had to extend the contract by a year. So the suggestion is now that report is public. We can now do that. I would suggest, this is off the top of my head, but when we do visioning in the summer, that topic will go back in, and that would probably be the first topic that you would consider in the next cycle, so that we've then got that period of notice to give to that contractor if we decided to do things differently. The urgency isn't there now because we've had to extend and we've got a year, so that will end next March. So I would imagine around September time would be the ideal time to take it then.
From a councillor's perspective, the urgency is still very much there. So
I
yeah,
have
it needs to
referenced
be
that to
high on the priority for the next next lot.
Yeah, it would automatically, from the work that I do in pulling the matrix together, it would automatically go over as an outstanding item. So regardless, even if you put forward as well, it will be there anyway. It won't get missed.
We were limited by Cardiff's response and dealing with it.
Yeah. So yeah, it's definitely still on the radar.
That's definitely a controversial one, so don't worry about that.
It'd be nice to have something a bit more straightforward, like active travel for a bit.
Yeah, it'd be nice, isn't it? Bins and litter. The next meeting then is the 27th of April, isn't it?
That's right.
At 10 o'clock, yeah. So
okay,
that'll be the next one, isn't it?
It will.
So thank you for your contribution. Have a nice copy now. I'm getting ready to go on my next one, which is ethics.
Thanks again, Kath.
Nice to see you all.
Yeah, no, thanks for that. Particularly wording them
Bye.
questions.
Yeah, I'll send them out to you. It won't be until tomorrow, I wouldn't have thought, but I'll get them out to you.
Wow, that's
Bye.